Chapter 2169I. The peak. 3. On the contrary, Yuan Mu, though still persevering, was at the end of his strength. The difference between the two was crystal clear. On the spiritual hollow mountain, Wang Teng finally arrived beneath Yuan Mu and abruptly uttered a voice, "Hello." Yuan Mu never expected to hear another voice here. His hand trembled, nearly causing him to roll down the mountain. His face turned pale, and his heart raced. What a close call. He breathed a sigh of relief, his heart still pounding. Then, with an unpleasant expression, he looked down. Below him, a figure appeared, smiling and looking up at him. Wang Ting. Yuan Mu's pupils contracted, his expression growing even more grim. Why was he here? This situation completely exceeded Yuan Mu's expectations. He always thought he was the most talented among the new students. Yet now, Wang Ting had caught up and was just a hair's breadth away. Didn't this indicate that Wang Ting's talent was comparable to his? Satisfying his morbid sense of humor, Wang Ting didn't say much more. He directly overtook Yuan Mu at an incredibly fast speed and continued climbing upward. Yuan Mu's expression changed slightly, and his pupils sharply contracted. That's impossible. Why, when they had reached such a height, did Wang Ting still seem so at ease? He didn't look like someone who had been climbing for more than 10 days. Goodbye. Take your time climbing. I'll go ahead. Wang Ting's voice echoed from above. Yuan Mu looked up, only to see Wang Ting unexpectedly turning back, waving casually at him with an extremely relaxed demeanor. Silence. Yuan Mu immediately gritted his teeth, wanting to accelerate and catch up with Wang Ting. However, he overestimated his condition. With an unstable step, not only did he fail to catch up, but he also slid down for a distance. Many onlookers couldn't help but break into a cold sweat at this sight. This was too dangerous. With a slight misstep, Yuan Mu could have fallen directly, and all the progress he had made climbing would have been lost in an instant. Tong Yen and others couldn't help feeling some sympathy for Yuan Mu. He got the short end of the stick encountering Wang Ting. Darn it. Yuan Mu's eyes revealed intense unwillingness. He clenched his teeth, veins popping on his forehead. His once handsome and aloof face now appeared somewhat ferocious. He didn't give up. Step by step, he chased after Wang Teng's figure but watched in despair as Wang Teng grew farther away. What is despair? This is it. At first, he thought that the other party was weaker than him, only to realize that the other party didn't treat him as his opponent at all. Because the gap was too vast, he couldn't even keep up with the others back. A strong sense of hopelessness emerged in Yuan Mu's heart. For the first time since he debuted, he faced such a significant setback. Wang Ting was unaware of the massive blow he dealt to Yuan Mu. He continued climbing towards the summit. He was the only one left and there was no one ahead to block his steps. Only the peak, like a deity towering above, overlooked this climber. And what Wang Ting had to do now was conquer this mountain, conquer this peak. I want to see if you can stop my footsteps. Wang Ting chuckled inwardly, his expression remarkably calm. His body resembled an extraordinarily agile divine ape. Each swift move allowed him to cross vast distances. In the plaza of the Grand Universe Hall, everyone's gaze was on Wang Ting. They were flabbergasted. Fast. Why is he still so fast? Doesn't he get tired at all? F***K. Was he a bug? Report. I want to report. This guy must be cheating. At this rate, Wang Ting should be able to reach the summit, right? Silence. The crowd fell silent. Indeed, at this speed, Wang Ting seemed highly likely to reach the summit. Achieving what even the judges couldn't do. Could Wang Ting really do it? Everyone stared fixedly at Wang Teng's figure, watching him step by step approach the peak of the spiritual hollow mountain. They all involuntarily held their breath. Could Wang Ting create a miracle? As time passed, another day went by. While everyone was focused on Wang Teng, Yuan Mu had already reached his limit. His consciousness blurred, but he continued to climb subconsciously. His arms stretched out, unable to grasp the mountain wall anymore, and he fell. He struggled to open his eyes, filled with reluctance. The scenery on either side rapidly receded, and he desperately looked towards the mountain top. The summit was still there. But he had no chance anymore. He wanted to find Wang Teng's figure, but he couldn't even see the other's back. He was filled with unwillingness. This time, he was completely defeated by that guy, and he could find no excuses to refute it. Inferior in strength and talent. In front of that guy, what pride did he have? Admirable. The president shook his head and waved his big hand. As Yuan Mu was about to crash to the ground, he made him disappear within the spiritual hollow mountain. The two God-stage martial warriors nodded and shook their heads. Normally, Yuan Mu's brilliance would have been dazzling even if he couldn't reach the peak. However, now, overshadowed by Wang Teng's brilliance, Yuan Mu's light was completely concealed. In front of a radiant sun, how could ordinary starlight attract attention? Many eternal stage powerhouses were eager to make a move. God stage powerhouses might not be interested, but having Yuan Mu as a disciple would still be excellent. Chapter 2170I. The Peak. 4. As for Wang Ting, they had completely given up. That guy was too monstrous. He must be under the watchful eyes of the president and the God stage beings of the academy now. They had no chance. Yuan Mu was sent to Occam's side. The other party's expression was gloomy, but he still took out a pill and fed it to Yuan Mu. Before long, Yuan Mu gradually regained consciousness. Seeing the surroundings, he couldn't help but be stunned. He had returned to the Grand Universe Hall Plaza, then he quickly realized he had reached his limit and couldn't climb any further. A sense of unwillingness surged in his heart, and his expression became extremely bleak. Wang Ting, has he come out? Yuan Mu asked. He's still in the Divine Space Mountain, Occam said coldly. Still inside. Yuan Mu struggled to get up, immediately looking towards the spiritual hollow mountain. Indeed, he found Wang Teng's figure. Then his expression changed drastically. From the outside perspective, Wang Teng was already very close to the summit of the spiritual hollow mountain. That guy was about to reach the peak. Yuan Mu clenched his fist, his nails deeply piercing into his palm without him even noticing. Why? Why could Wang Teng achieve it while he couldn't? How could the divine constellation physique lose to someone else? Countless questions surfaced in his mind, causing his thoughts to become chaotic, almost driving him mad. Time passed again. On the spiritual hollow mountain, Wang Teng gazed at the summit above, his eyes shimmering. Finally, we're almost there. At this point, he could feel his limits. Although he had unraveled the mysteries of the spiritual hollow mountain, at most, he only alleviated the pressure by using runic nodes. It wasn't a true liberation from the shackles of the spiritual hollow mountain. He couldn't do it now. Even if he was a Saint Rune Master, he wouldn't be able to do it. Climbing to this height, his force, spirit, and more were almost at their limits. He even used all kinds of talents, activating different physiques in his body to sustain him until now. It could be said that even without unraveling the mysteries of the spiritual hollow mountain, Wang Ting's sheer force, spirit, and talent were enough to crush Yuan Mu. I didn't expect this. The president sighed. After so many years, there's still someone who can reach the peak of the spiritual hollow mountain. They don't know that if they truly climb using force, spirit, talent, etc., Cosmos stage martial warriors simply cannot reach the summit of this spiritual hollow mountain. The entity on the flame throne chuckled. President, your tricks are as evil as always. You gave them an unattainable goal, the person on the lightning throne complained. Every generation of students had fallen for the president's schemes. Unfortunately, all the students foolishly fell into the president's carefully laid trap. They sought not only the mystery reward at the end but also to prove themselves. After all, which genius wouldn't want to reach the pinnacle and become a revered figure? The president undoubtedly understood the psychology of these talented warriors, leading them all to climb toward the mountain's peak. Ha ha ha, the president couldn't help but burst into laughter, his voice slowly echoing, only by working hard can they reach a higher position. One hope they can understand this truth. The two God-stage martial warriors nodded. But this kid really surprised us. He actually reached this seemingly unattainable goal, remarked the entity on the lightning throne. He found another way, sort of cheating, the entity on the flame throne said wryly. This is the second one, right? The one back then also did something similar. Their runic talents are quite extraordinary, the entity on the lightning throne added. Runic talent can be considered a form of innate ability. It doesn't count as cheating, the president chuckled. But compared to the previous one, who stumbled upon the secrets of the spiritual hollow mountain in advance, Wang Teng's achievement is more commendable. As the president and others discussed, 3 more hours passed, and Wang Teng's face turned slightly pale. However, he finally reached the summit. Gripping the platform at the mountain's peak, he executed a somersault and landed steadily at the highest point. Puff! A deep exhale escaped from Wang Teng's lips. Standing at the summit, he gazed down at the spiritual hollow mountain below. A sense of accomplishment surged within him. He had succeeded. He had conquered the spiritual hollow mountain. I am at the peak. The onlookers below, their eyes squinting against the dazzling radiance of the figure at the mountain's peak, felt a complex mix of emotions. It was as if they were witnessing an intense brilliance that defied description. Wang Teng had reached the summit. Once again, he had created a miracle. Wang Teng smiled faintly, standing tall at the mountain's peak. His heart swelled with an unprecedented sense of openness. However, before he could fully savor the moment, he suddenly felt a blur before his eyes. In an instant, he involuntarily disappeared from his position. F***K. Chapter 2171. There are mountains beyond mountains and skies beyond skies. Wang Teng reached the peak of the spiritual hollow mountain. Everyone was flabbergasted. Yuan Mu, Zhulong Shan, and the others were filled with unwillingness. Wu Yang, Lu Tian, Baichuan Liu, and the other talented martial warriors were in awe too. This guy was truly extraordinary. Though they were reluctant to admit it, they were indeed trailing behind Wang Teng by a considerable margin. Only when observed from the outside did they realize the vast distance still separating them from the mountaintop. They were simply unable to reach the summit. Yet, Wang Teng had achieved the impossible. He surpassed them all, climbing to the pinnacle a feat beyond the reach of all geniuses. Such a disparity left many prodigies feeling powerless. On the other side, the president and the 2 God-stage martial warriors were surprised. He had reached the peak. Amazing. The young man completely deciphered the spiritual hollow mountain on his own, surpassing even the previous genius who had accomplished a similar feat in a lightning element, earth element, and metal element martial warrior. I can teach this brat. The God-stage martial warrior on the lightning throne slapped the armrest and said loudly. Mph, Wang Teng has a divine flame. A fire element martial warrior like me is the most suitable to guide him. The God-stage martial warrior on the fire throne chuckled. What's the big deal with the divine flame? My lightning, earth, and metal powers are immensely powerful. Coupled with my profound techniques, I can make him a formidable force, boasted the God-stage martial warrior on the lightning throne. Your words are biased. His possession of the divine flame is an advantage, and it would be unwise to ignore it. If he combines it with my techniques and martial arts, his divine flame will exhibit its greatest power, far surpassing ordinary lightning forces, argued the God-stage martial warrior on the flame throne. The surrounding eternal stage powerhouses were left stunned. Just as Wang Teng reached the summit of the spiritual hollow mountain, the 2 God-stage powerhouses were already eager to compete to be his master. Such a situation was extremely rare in the history of the 7th Stellar Academy. No, it should be said that such situations were extremely rare in the history of the 7 Stellar Academies. Only those truly peerless geniuses could compel God-stage powerhouses to set aside their pride and vie for discipleship. No need to argue, one have decided to personally take Wang Teng as my disciple, said the president of the 7th Stellar Academy, gently stroking his beard with a smile. The 2 God-stage martial warriors were shocked. The eternal stage martial warriors around them looked at the president in astonishment too. The president hadn't personally taken a disciple for a long time. This time, he was making an exception for Wang Teng. Sikong II couldn't help but be amazed when he saw this scene. Wang Teng was impressive. When he learned that the other had ascended to the star rankings, He knew that the rise of this young genius was only a matter of time. However, he didn't expect it to happen so quickly. Becoming the president's disciple would significantly elevate Wang Ting's identity and background. Many major forces would start to regard him with a hint of apprehension, and older generation powerhouses might hesitate to act against him. Wang Ting would also gain considerable growth time with this status. President, you have many things to attend to every day. Don't tire yourself out. Leave this hard work to us, the being on the flame throne said. That's right. President, you're the face of the 7th Stellar Academy, overseeing everything. Teaching disciples is a trivial matter that doesn't require your personal attention, added the powerhouse on the lightning throne. The president could only laugh wryly. Just as he was about to say something, his brow suddenly furrowed. On the mountaintop of the spiritual hollow mountain, Wang Teng's figure unexpectedly vanished. The president and the two God-stage martial warriors exchanged glances with one another. Rising from their thrones, they seemed to have a sudden realization. What happened? The eternal stage martial warriors around were greatly surprised, furrowing their brows as they looked toward the mountaintop of the spiritual hollow mountain. Why did Wang Teng disappear? Tong Yen and the others were still in shock. They were stunned when Wang Ting suddenly disappeared. Yuan Mu, Zhu Longshan, and the others didn't know what happened either. They stared at the peak of the mountain with puzzled expressions. Did Wang Ting go to claim the mysterious reward? Only the president and the others knew that the so-called mystery reward was just a diversion. In reality, it wasn't at the mountaintop of the spiritual hollow mountain. If someone truly reached the summit, the president wouldn't mind presenting some items as a reward for the achievement. For beings of their caliber, even a small token would be considered a rare treasure to ordinary Cosmos-stage martial warriors. At this moment, the president and the others wore extremely grave expressions, indicating that Wang Teng's disappearance had nothing to do with them. I heard that the creator of the spiritual hollow mountain left behind some tricks. The God-stage entity on the flame throne contemplated for a moment, hesitatingly speaking. This information was ancient, obscure, and known to very few. Some even regarded it as mere rumor, as no one had truly triggered it. Even the last genius who reached the summit didn't activate any hidden mechanisms at the mountaintop. As time passed, many had forgotten about this piece of information. Even though every batch of freshmen would use the spiritual hollow mountain for their test, no one thought of the small tricks hidden inside. Upon hearing this, the president seemed to recall something, his eyes flashing with a hint of shock. It seems that Wang Ting indeed triggered the hidden mechanism in the spiritual hollow mountain. The two God-stage martial warriors glanced at each other. They were even more astounded. Do you know what the triggering conditions are? The God-stage entity on the flame throne inquired. No one knows. The president regretfully shook his head. His eyes flashed with a glint of brilliance, staring deeply at the spiritual hollow mountain. Come, let's take a look. As he spoke, he vanished from his original position and appeared instantly at the summit of the spiritual hollow mountain. The two God-stage entities, with a hint of curiosity in their eyes, followed the president into the spiritual hollow mountain, directly arriving at the peak. Witnessing this scene, the onlookers were astonished. What on earth was happening? Even the president and the others personally ascended to the summit of the spiritual hollow mountain. From the looks of the president and the others, it seemed that they were also unaware of what was going on. Could it be that there was no reward? Many people were left puzzled. They had no idea about the mysteries of the spiritual hollow mountain. No matter how they speculated, they couldn't fathom that Wang Ting had triggered some hidden mechanism in the spiritual hollow mountain. The only thing they could guess was that it was definitely not simple, as it had alarmed the president and the others. Yuan Mu, Zhu Longshan, and the others blinked continuously. They felt uneasy, wondering if Wang Ting was about to stir up trouble again. They had already been hit hard, and they didn't want to face another setback. Tong Yen and the others discussed in low voices. They didn't know what happened either. Why do one feel like Wang Ting is about to cause trouble again? Yu Chiqiao mused, speaking with a sense of foreboding. Everyone felt speechless. The way you're talking, it sounds like Wang Ting frequently causes trouble. How much distrust do you have for him? But, after thinking about it carefully, they felt that it was true. Whenever Wang Teng was mentioned, it invariably brought to mind his penchant for mischief, like he was never at peace. Wang Teng looked around in confusion. He found himself at the foot of another mountain. Looking up, he was surprised to see a peak even higher and steeper than the spiritual hollow mountain. What was going on? Hadn't he just climbed to the summit of the spiritual hollow mountain? Why was he now at the foot of another mountain? This mountain in front of him was clearly not the spiritual hollow mountain, but it gave him a familiar feeling. There seemed to be some kind of binding force, preventing flight and confining him within the mountain's range. However, it was different. The two mountains were not the same. Oh my God! Wang Teng raised his hand to his forehead, gazing at the mountain's peak in silence. What is this? Are they making me climb again? He had just finished climbing the spiritual hollow mountain, and before he could even rejoice, it seemed he was about to embark on another ascent. This felt like a joke. No, wait. Wang Teng suddenly furrowed his brows, examining his own body with a serious expression. This is not my real body. It's just a spiritual projection. Someone had silently transported his spiritual form to this place, but his physical body remained in an unknown location. Even Wang Teng, typically calm and collected, felt a bit uneasy in this situation. He was brought here for no reason and his spirit left his body. No one would be able to accept this. Taking 2 deep breaths to maintain composure, he scanned the surroundings. The place seemed eerily similar to the previous situation. The surroundings were indeed similar to the previous scenario, with a solitary mountain and a vast emptiness. This mountain seemed to float in the depths of the universe. This scene reminded Wang Teng of a saying. There are mountains beyond mountains and skies beyond skies. Wasn't this mountain in front of him another peak beyond the spiritual hollow mountain? Wasn't this sky around him an even greater expanse? So, was he going to continue climbing the mountain? Wang Teng felt a bit exasperated. Just when he thought he had finished climbing the spiritual hollow mountain, he was being forced to embark on another ascent. He couldn't take it anymore. Also, climbing this mountain might be dangerous. Approaching the edge, he peered down. Rocks tumbled, but no sound reached his ears. It seemed like an endless abyss below. If he were to fall during the climb, he would undoubtedly face certain death. Moreover, he had no idea what this mountain was all about. Perhaps it had nothing to do with the talent test of the academy. Climbing this mountain might be a futile endeavor. Wang Teng decided to sit cross-legged at the foot of the mountain, closing his eyes to meditate. Regardless of the circumstances, he refused to climb. If someone could silently transport his spiritual form here without him resisting, then resisting might be futile if something happened. Furthermore, the 7th Stellar Academy's president and other powerful figures were outside the spiritual hollow mountain. If he vanished inexplicably, they would surely take action. So, he waited. At the foot of the mountain, life seemed to return to the surroundings due to Wang Teng's appearance. But, as he sat like a stone, the area fell back into silence. At the mountain's summit, a figure clad in simple garments sat cross-legged, facing the distant void, seemingly lost in contemplation. Motionless, like a carved stone statue, the person remained in that position. After countless ages, someone has finally arrived at this place. After an indeterminate period, a hint of emotion flickered in their eyes, accompanied by a soft sigh. But, lowering their head, as if observing the situation at the mountain's base, a faint smile graced their lips. Quite an interesting little fellow. Chapter 2172, Spirit Torture. 1. Wang Teng sat cross-legged at the mountain's base, facing the abyss below. He focused on his breath, paying no heed to the surroundings. This place was too desolate. If he stayed here for too long, he feared he might grow restless, perhaps even subconsciously compelled to climb that mountain. Because climbing was the only way out, there was a restraining force on the mountain, preventing anyone from leaving its confines. Either they would fall directly down, or they would climb. As long as one's mind was intact, the first thought that would come to mind was climbing. But Wang Teng deliberately chose not to do so. He opted for the third option, staying put. This choice seemed more prudent. Someone must have brought me here. I'll stay put and see how they handle it. Wang Teng thought to himself. Could it be a powerful individual from the academy? Adding another test for me? It doesn't feel right, though. The president is right there. If a strong individual used a method to teleport me away, they would at least notify me. I wonder if the president and the others will come to rescue me. Is shouting for help useful now? Various thoughts flashed through Wang Teng's mind. He realized that he couldn't practice here, so that left him with nothing to do but daydream. The recent climb up the spiritual hollow mountain had left his spirit extremely exhausted and weakened. At the moment, he had no desire to move. Otherwise, with his personality, he might have tried climbing the mountain. During Wang Teng's wait, time slowly passed. But in this place, time seemed to have no concept. It felt like a day had passed, yet it also felt like 3 days. Everything appeared exceptionally dull, and Wang Teng felt that the mental fatigue he had experienced was somewhat relieved. It wasn't due to cultivation, just a result of resting. So, Wang Teng believed that his choice was very wise. He should rest here. Climbing. It was tiring. Previously, climbing spiritual hollow mountain was unavoidable. But this mountain? Who knew if there were any rewards? Unfortunately, the president he eagerly awaited never appeared, leaving him quite disappointed. President, please save me. Save your adorable student. With my excellent talent, not saving me is a loss for the 7th Stellar Academy, Wang Teng muttered to himself. On top of the mountain, the figure chuckled and shook his head. This kid had quite the personality. Little one, climb up here, and you can formally become my disciple. A voice filled with age suddenly echoed in Wang Teng's ears. Wang Teng was momentarily stunned, abruptly opening his eyes and looking around. However, he furrowed his brow quickly because there was no sign of anyone around. Then, he raised his head, gazing toward the mountaintop, lost in thought. The person just now seemed to have said that he could become his disciple. Climb up and I can become his disciple? Wang Teng's expression turned somewhat peculiar, unsure whether this was real or not. This was the same trick as the president. With the president, it was a mystery reward, and here it was becoming a disciple. But Wang Teng still didn't know the other person's strength, and accepting him as his master seemed a bit hasty. Elder, one have already reached the summit of the spiritual hollow mountain. I can have a god stage martial warrior as my master. Wang Teng's eyes turned, and he respectfully bowed towards the mountaintop, honestly stating. His intention was clear. He could already find a god stage martial warrior as his master. If the elder's strength was weaker than the god stage, there was no need for further discussion. Of course, this was all his fabrication. He didn't know that a god stage martial warrior wanted to take him in as his disciple. However, he believed that based on his performance on spiritual hollow mountain, even if the god stage martial warrior didn't take him in as his disciple, an eternal stage ruler would. It wouldn't be any worse. If the figure on this mountain was a god stage existence, then he would consider it. However, if not, there was no need to climb another mountain. God stage. The figure chuckled and said, my ability is naturally above your god stage. Above the god stage. Wang Teng seemed to detect a hint of disdain in the figure's voice. Suddenly, his whole body shook, and a burst of brilliance erupted from his eyes, filled with incredulity. Could this elder be that powerful? Could it be a trick? But thinking about it, the fact that the figure was able to transfer him here in the presence of the president and others could be considered a demonstration of strength. If that's the case, climbing this mountain might not be a bad idea. It felt exciting just thinking about having a formidable martial warrior above the god stage as his master. But a student from the Stellar Academies, Wang Teng hesitated. You brat, you haven't even climbed the mountain yet, and you're already considering so much. Do you think you can make it up here? The figure on the mountaintop laughed and scolded, saying, no matter, as long as you can climb up, everything will be fine. Since Senior says so, then I'll rest assured. Wang Teng grinned, stood up from the ground, and prepared to climb the mountain. However, upon seeing this even more towering and steep mountain in front of him, Wang Teng couldn't help but feel a bit bitter. It was too high. This mountain looked even higher than the spiritual hollow mountain. Now that he was a spiritual entity, the restrictions on this mountain were probably targeted at the spiritual aspect. Since he had already agreed, he stopped hesitating and took a deep breath. He then started climbing up the mountain. He placed his hands on the rock wall. After climbing a mountain for more than 10 days before, he had already become accustomed to it. Climbing had become a skill. He climbed dozens of meters easily. Wang Ting felt a bit puzzled. Apart from that imprisoning force, seemed to have no other challenges. Was it so simple? It was too easy. Although there was restraint, it didn't have much impact. He could maintain a normal climbing speed, unlike the spiritual hollow mountain before, which gave him a feeling of being crushed by a great mountain. Chapter 2173, Spirit Torture. 2. This was completely beyond his expectations. The experience of climbing the spiritual hollow mountain before had given him a false impression, making him think that this mountain would be the same. However, reality proved otherwise. Soon, he climbed 1,000 meters, and suddenly, a strong wind swept in from all around. This wind seemed to come from nowhere, as if it appeared out of thin air, directly blowing onto his spiritual entity. It's here. I knew it wouldn't be so simple. Wang Teng's expression changed, and his face became serious. At the same time, waves of pain spread from his body. This was the wind specifically targeting spiritual entities. He lowered his head to take a look, and there was no trace of injury on his body, but the cutting pain felt substantial. Puff! Another gust of wind blew, and Wang Ting's entire face contorted. He gasped for cold air. Damn, it hurts. Wang Ting gritted his teeth, endured the fierce wind, and continued to climb upward, trying to speed up as much as possible. However, the restrictions of this mountain kept his speed within a certain range, unable to exceed it, forcing him to climb methodically. He didn't know how long he had been climbing, and Wang Ting felt numb all over. Every part of his body was in pain as if he had been cut 1,000 times. If his willpower hadn't been strong enough, he would be unable to bear it. Just at this moment, the fierce wind suddenly disappeared. Wang Ting was slightly stunned and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. He was still alive. Boom. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck directly at him. What the hell? Wang Ting couldn't help but curse as he endured the thunderous impact. This feeling was simply indescribable. Before, he used to bear lightning strikes with his physical body, but this time, his spiritual entity endured the lightning, which felt even more painful than enduring it with his physical body. What drove him crazy was that right after the fierce wind, lightning followed, providing absolutely no opportunity for rest. Boom, boom, boom. Before Wang Ting could think too much, several bolts of lightning struck again. This time, there were 3 thunderbolts in a row. He was left charred on the outside and tender on the inside. Although the lightning was painful, it was like the fierce wind, leaving no visible marks. Immediately, he snapped back to reality and hurriedly continued climbing. He had almost been stunned just now, forgetting even to climb the mountain. Wang Ting was not foolish. Based on the previous 2 rounds of torment, it seemed that the type of torture would change at regular intervals. For example, it was fierce wind before, followed by lightning. Perhaps, next in line would be flames. What he needed to do now was to surpass this region as quickly as possible, or rather, to reach the summit as quickly as possible. This cursed peak was even more torturous than the spiritual hollow mountain. The spiritual hollow mountain only required him to climb, but this mountain was truly a torment. Boom, boom, boom. Bolts of lightning struck down, relentlessly pounding Wang Teng's form, making every cell in his body feel an unparalleled agony. The pain levels of the fierce wind and the lightning were comparable, yet entirely different. One was akin to a lacerating pain, and the other, a terrifying stabbing sensation. This torment worked on Wang Ting's spiritual entity, intensifying his sensations as if his entire being were on the verge of collapse. After an indeterminate period, the lightning abruptly ceased. Wang Ting was on his guard. He scanned his surroundings vigilantly. Boom! A ball of crimson flames descended directly from above, enveloping him entirely. I swear, damn it! Wang Ting felt pain throughout his body as if he were being seared in a furnace. Me and my jinxed mouth. Why did one have to mention fire? And fire really came. Am I so accurate? What's next? Ice. Ice and fire. Wang Ting was speechless. He bore with the excruciating pain and climbed up the mountain frantically. Balls of flames descended from the sky, relentlessly scorching his spiritual form. Bearing the pain with gritted teeth, his face grew paler, and his spiritual entity gradually thinned. Under this continuous torment, his spiritual energy was severely depleted, and with no replenishment in sight, it was at risk of dissipating. At the mountain's summit, the figure shook its head, a hint of disappointment apparent in its eyes, before turning its gaze back to the void. I can't go on like this. Wang Ting felt a weight on his heart. He sensed that if this continued, his spiritual strength wouldn't withstand the journey to the mountaintop. He needed to find another solution. This torment is directly targeting the spirit, or, in other words, the soul. What is the soul? Wait a minute, the soul can be considered a form of willpower. 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 My primordial consciousness. My unyielding lightning battle conscious. Aren't these forms of willpower? When they emanate, they transform into auras, but fundamentally, they are a kind of willpower. In an instant, a flash of insight crossed Wang Ting's mind. He immediately employed the power of his own will, the only recourse he had in this situation. In this predicament where other methods were ineffective, willpower could still be utilized. Boom! At that moment, a terrifying aura erupted from Wang Ting's spiritual form. The ancient and vast willpower, the unwavering resolve, the lightning authority, all three forms of conscious simultaneously burst forth. His spiritual entity became like an immortal lightning deity, majestic, ancient, and impervious to violation. His spiritual form once again solidified, resisting the flames that surrounded him. Wang Ting continued to climb, aiming to traverse this fiery region as quickly as possible. At the mountain's summit, the figure's eyes revealed a hint of surprise, and a look of keen interest appeared on its face. On the mountain wall, a figure resembling a monkey ablaze with flames continued to climb, unwavering and indomitable. Chapter Spirit Torture 3. At some point, the flames disappeared, giving way to a biting cold. Wang Ting. Gusts of cold wind blew in, and a freezing chill penetrated deep into his soul, almost freezing him solid. Frost appeared on the surface of Wang Ting's body, making him shiver uncontrollably. So cold. If he hadn't just used the power of his will to solidify his spiritual form, he might have disintegrated on the spot. This mountain was relentless. It seemed to get more ruthless with every challenge, leaving no room for survival. Wang Ting dared not speculate anymore. His mouth was jinxed. Every time he spoke, the next challenge seemed even more daunting. He feared that if he continued, it might not end well. Bearing the piercing cold, he continued climbing step by step. Although he had employed the power of his will, it was still challenging to persist. His spiritual form continued to weaken. As time drifted on, Wang Ting continued his relentless ascent. The biting cold dissipated, replaced by a razor-sharp golden gale. This wind, more menacing than the previous icy gusts, added an extra edge to the challenge. Subsequently, the golden tempest transformed into numerous green vines, entwining around him, attempting to drag him into the abyss. Following this, giant stones tumbled down, torrents of water surged, and venomous winds ran rampant. Every ordeal landed on him with tangible force. As if that weren't enough, the torment persisted in relentless cycles. Each round concluded only to give way to a new set of trials. As long as Wang Ting had not reached the ultimate peak, he remained subjected to this inhuman torture. Under such torture, Wang Ting's spiritual form became thinner and thinner, resembling a candle flickering in the wind, on the verge of extinguishing at any moment. Can't we stop this madness? Wang Ting felt the thinness of his spiritual form, nearly as delicate as a piece of paper, and was on the verge of tears. When did apprenticeship become such an arduous ordeal? Was this teacher serious or not? This was literally a matter of life and death. At least with the spiritual hollow mountain, there were some loopholes to exploit, but this mountain doesn't allow for any chances. It doesn't give him any opportunities. In this critical moment, as waves of green poisonous winds swept in from all directions and Wang Ting found himself unable to hold on any longer, an enchanting black lotus mark unconsciously appeared on the center of his forehead. This black lotus mark resisted the final onslaught of the green poison wind, keeping his true spirit intact. Unaware of it himself, Wang Ting only had one thought in his mind as he climbed. He wanted to reach the summit and question the old guy who tricked him into becoming his disciple. Are you playing me? After an indeterminate period, when he climbed onto the final resting place, there were no more obstacles before him. As he gazed around, atop the summit, a figure weathered by time sat cross-legged, facing away from him. Wang Teng's vision darkened, and he fell into unconsciousness. His spiritual form had reached its limits. It was the sudden activation of the demon lotus poison body that played a role, unexpectedly manifesting in his spiritual form. That was a surprise. The figure that had been seated in meditation for countless years now moved slightly. Slowly, he stood up and turned around. Before Wang Ting stood a middle-aged man with graying hair, sharp eyebrows, and eyes as profound as the void. He exuded an aura of ancient wisdom and weariness. Despite wearing simple attire, he possessed a unique charm that left an indelible impression. Approaching Wang Ting, the middle-aged man scrutinized him with a strange gleam in his eyes. Fascinating. Truly fascinating. Chapter 2175 The Origin of the Universe. The Limit of the Cosmos Stage. 1. A towering mountain hovered in the void. At the summit, a figure sat cross-legged on the ground, and a black-haired youth lay suspended in front of him. The unprecedented strength of the soul. Even with my many years of experience, this can be called a first. No wonder his spiritual power is so formidable. And that power of will, ancient and unyielding, intertwined with lightning, these are rarely seen willpowers. I didn't expect them to appear simultaneously in a martial warrior at the cosmos stage. Truly intriguing. Moreover, the degree of these willpowers far exceeds his own realm, at least reaching the universe stage. In addition, there are traces of various talents in him. These talents are different, yet they perfectly blend into his body and even his soul, without any rejection or non-integration. From the essence of his soul, has just in his 20s, yet he has achieved such accomplishments, surpassing the most powerful races in the universe. It seems that this young man has many secrets. The middle-aged man with white hair cast a profound gaze over the black-haired youth before him, and his eyes flashed with strange light. This youth had indeed provided him with quite a few surprises. Before Wang Ting used the power of will, he thought Wang Ting was not the person he was looking for. However, now it seemed he had almost misjudged him. The black-haired youth before him was more than qualified to become his disciple. Moreover, he was like a piece of extraordinary jade. With careful carving, he could undoubtedly surpass the geniuses of the most powerful races. After an unknown period, Wang Ting slowly regained consciousness. The pain in his body had disappeared, and his spiritual form had once again become solid. He looked at his condition with some astonishment. He had nearly dissipated before, but now he had inexplicably returned to normal. It was truly miraculous. Wait. No, this wasn't his spiritual form. It was his physical body. His spiritual form has returned to his physical body. No wonder everything felt strange. With his physical body back, Wang Ting finally felt a sense of security. Otherwise, he felt like he was walking around without clothes. Wait a minute, he seemed to have seen someone here when he climbed up. Wang Ting was suddenly startled and quickly looked around, only to find himself suspended in midair. The figure that was sitting cross-legged before was now sitting beside him. He was instantly shocked, and his whole body fell from midair to the ground. The person sat silently beside him, like a ghost. If it were an ordinary martial warrior, with his spiritual power, he would have sensed it a long time ago. But this person showed no fluctuations, and he didn't notice anything. Aren't you supposed to be very bold? Why are you scared now? The middle-aged man with white hair said. Hee hee. Wang Ting forced a laugh and said, I'm not scared, just unprepared. How do I address you? I have no name. The middle-aged man with white hair said calmly. His tone revealed a sense of ancientness. No name. Wang Teng's eyes flickered, thinking to himself, how can a person not have a name? Despite his thoughts, he bowed respectfully and said, then I will address you directly as Elder. No need for too much courtesy. The middle-aged man with white hair looked at Wang Teng, nodded, and said, as I mentioned before, as long as you climb up here, I will accept you as my disciple. Now, I will fulfill my promise. A glint flashed in Wang Teng's eyes. He was going to take him in as his disciple. Direct. Decisive. Wang Teng couldn't help but wonder about the true cultivation level of this elder. If he was indeed a being above the god stage, he wouldn't need to be afraid of anyone in the universe anymore. What's your name? The white-haired middle-aged man asked. Wang Ting. Wang Teng replied. The white-haired middle-aged man nodded. He said slowly, in my entire life, I have taken in only 2 disciples. Now, you are the third. However, my true body is not present here. This is just a remnant left behind by me. So, for now, I can only acknowledge you as my disciple in name. Once you come before me in the future, I will formally hold a disciple initiation ceremony and officially accept you as my disciple. Wang Ting's eyes flickered with a hint of disappointment. It turned out he was just a disciple in name. However, the elder mentioned that his true body was not present, so Wang Ting dared not ask for more. However, the next time we meet, if your progress fails to satisfy me, I reserve the right to revoke your status at any time, the intermediate-aged individual with white hair added. Wang Teng was speechless. Just a moment ago, the elder seemed straightforward, but now there was a sudden change. Nevertheless, he wasn't worried about failing to impress the elder. After all, he had some special advantages. If he couldn't gain recognition under these circumstances, he might as well find a hole to hide in and never come out again. He wanted to find a master because he wanted a powerful backing, thus providing enough time for his personal growth. Wang Teng had the support of the system, so he didn't need to rely too much on a master for cultivation. Hence, having a disciple in name was not bad. You don't need to worry. With your age and cultivation level, I am already quite satisfied. With your talent, as long as you continue to grow smoothly, you can surpass the majority of geniuses, the intermediate-aged man with ivory tresses said. Moreover, now that you are my disciple in name, I will naturally provide you with some opportunities. Opportunities. Wang Ting's eyes lit up. Tangible benefits were always welcomed. Excitedly, he exclaimed, Master. Seeing Wang Ting's eager expression, the intermediate-aged individual couldn't help but find it amusing. Shaking his head, he said, Don't be in such a hurry. Before I provide you with opportunities, I need to know which path you intend to take. Chapter 2176. The Origin of the Universe. The Limit of the Cosmos Stage. 2. Which path? Wang Teng was stunned. This question was a little familiar. His expression turned strange. I see that your spirit is powerful. Do you want to major in spirit? The white-haired middle-aged man asked. I don't major in spirit. Wang Ting shook his head. Your force cultivation is not bad too. That means that you major in force, the white-haired middle-aged man said. Which forces do you plan to use? Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, poison, ice, light. Wang Ting counted with his fingers and replied honestly. Well, he shouldn't say anything about dark force. The white-haired middle-aged man. Master. Wang Ting felt a little guilty. Do you have all these forces? The white-haired middle-aged man looked at Wang Ting and asked. Yes. Wang Ting nodded. The middle-aged man with white hair had a profound gaze, seemingly lost in thought. He said, Little one, you have surprised me. You're too kind, Wang Ting replied. I'm not praising you, the white-haired man said. Do you know what the consequences are of cultivating so many types of forces simultaneously? I know, Wang Ting nodded. Do you still want to continue? The man asked indifferently. Yes. Wang Ting said firmly. Good. The white-haired man looked at him deeply and remarked, You have extraordinary spirit. Even your senior brother and sister are not as impressive as you. Master, is this a compliment? Wang Ting asked carefully. Yes. The white-haired middle-aged man replied. In that case, thank you, Wang Ting said with a cheerful smile. So, you're planning to focus on cultivating forces? The white-haired man shook his head and commented. To be honest, Master, my development in various aspects is relatively balanced. Whether it's spiritual strength, forces, physical strength, and so on, there are no weaknesses. So, in a sense, 1 am focusing on all of them, Wang Teng explained with a shy smile. This statement might sound a bit boastful, but it was the truth. The white-haired man didn't expect Wang Ting to say such things, and even he, for a moment, was left speechless. In the past, he was the one who excelled in showing off, but today, he found himself being outdone by this newly accepted disciple. It was truly a first in his life. For some reason, the white-haired middle-aged man felt relieved. His first 2 disciples were not as adept as him in the art of showing off. Master, can't I? Wang Ting noticed the white-haired middle-aged man's silence and thought that he had angered him. He called him carefully. In my experience, your situation is unprecedented. The middle-aged man with white hair spoke after a moment of silence. He looked calmly at Wang Teng and said, though in my philosophy, all paths lead to the summit, and one can reach the pinnacle regardless of the chosen route, I must admit, your choice is the most challenging. Let me ask you once more, are you certain you want to proceed? Yes. Wang Teng nodded without any hesitation. He had long contemplated this question. Without the presence of the system, he would not have made this choice. But since the opportunity was laid before him, he couldn't afford to miss it. Good. The middle-aged man with white hair, whether relieved or harboring complex emotions, glanced at him and nodded. Since you've chosen this path, one will support you. With a casual wave of his hand, a transparent sphere the size of a head appeared in front of Wang Ting, emitting a faint and ethereal glow as it hovered in midair. This object is the origin of a universe. I happened to pass by a universe on the brink of destruction in my earlier years and condensed it into existence. Now, one bestow it upon you. The origin of a universe. Wang Ting's eyes widened in astonishment. He had heard about this treasure from Round Ball. It was said to be an extremely rare item that could only be obtained from within a secret realm, and few were fortunate enough to possess it. The last time he entered the chaotic Uncharted, he didn't get the origin of the universe even though his gains were not bad. Reflecting on it later, he couldn't help but feel a tinge of regret. Yet, his master was able to take out the origin of the universe so easily. This was unbelievable. If Round Ball were present, its eyes would likely widen in disbelief. What it had mentioned about others obtaining the origin of a universe in the past seemed trivial compared to the colossal sphere before him. The middle-aged man's earlier words hinted that this particular origin of a universe was extracted from a universe on the brink of demise, making it a complete and intact cosmic source. It was unlike the mere fractions acquired by previous martial warriors. At this moment, Wang Teng could distinctly sense the peculiar power emanating from the origin of a universe. It seemed to encapsulate the most fundamental forces of the universe. With just a slight exposure to the radiance emanating from the transparent sphere, he felt as if his entire being was undergoing a sublime transformation. Do you know what the cosmos stage is? The middle-aged man glanced at Wang Ting, not affording him a chance to respond before continuing. To reach the cosmos stage is to birth a small universe within a warrior's body. Upon absorbing this origin of a universe, the inner cosmos will tend towards perfection, leading to a metamorphosis and elevation of the soul and physique. Martial warriors at the cosmos stage should be able to reach the limit of the cosmos stage after absorbing the origin of a universe of this magnitude. The limit of the cosmos stage? Wang Teng repeated in surprise. Every realm has its limits, but those who truly reach them are exceedingly rare. Generally, the deeper the foundation within each stage, the stronger one's abilities become. Upon advancing to the next stage, the strength also surpasses those of the same stage. To go far, one must have a profound foundation. Reaching the limits is the best outcome, the middle-aged man patiently explained. What happens after reaching the limits? Wang Ting inquired curiously. Nothing special. It merely means invincibility within the same stage, the middle-aged man replied nonchalantly. Invincibility within the same realm. Wang Ting raised an eyebrow, fell silent for a moment, and internally quipped, quite the nothing special. He had always believed that defeating all geniuses at the same stage would make him invincible within that stage. However, it now seemed that true invincibility required pushing the boundaries of the stage to its limits. And achieving these limits appeared to be an immensely challenging feat without sufficient opportunities. It was simply impossible. Regarding the origin of a universe before him, Wang Ting dared to assert that even a true God-stage powerhouse might struggle to produce such a treasure. "Let's merge. I'll protect you," the white-haired middle-aged man said. "All right," Wang Ting nodded without hesitation. He seated himself in a meditative posture, his gaze fixed upon the transparent sphere. With a casual gesture from the middle-aged man, the transparent sphere floated toward Wang Ting, gradually merging into his body from above. Boom! In an instant, Wang Ting felt a shock throughout his body. A peculiar force erupted within his inner cosmos, transforming into wisps of transparent energy that swept through his entire internal universe, reaching every corner. The transformation was starting. Outside, the middle-aged man with white hair watched Wang Ting with a gaze that carried a hint of complexity. This individual was the most unique genius he had encountered. And also the most gifted. "Could you be the person I am seeking?" The middle-aged man mumbled to himself. The voice was so soft that no one would have heard it. As time passed, Wang Ting completely absorbed the origin of a universe. Slowly opening his eyes, he sensed that his entire being had transformed. Unable to resist, he glanced at his attribute panel. Origin of life, 11800. Origin of soul, 118000. Spirit, 20,236,000. Cosmos realm, my origin of life and origin of soul have both increased. There's also my spirit attribute. It's already at the perfected stage, but there's a new limit now. 236,000 points. It's going to increase again. Is this the limit? Wang Ting was surprised. He clenched his fist and instantly felt a subtle metamorphosis in his physical form, as if his body had undergone a profound transformation, making his strength incredibly formidable. Boom! A punch erupted, creating a resounding explosion in the air. The space twisted, collapsed, and then shattered, revealing a pitch-black void of nothingness. The might of a single punch was terrifying. So powerful. Wang Ting marveled. His physical strength was already formidable, capable of rivaling a heaven-stage martial warrior. Now, it seemed to have become even more potent, a development that was nothing short of incredible. Chapter 2177. Oh my God. Direct Disciple. 1. Your current strength is equivalent to the power of the fourth realm power, declared the middle-aged man with white hair. The fourth realm? Wang Ting was slightly puzzled and asked, "Master, what is the realm power?" Realm power is the power of the world, a unit specifically used to measure strength. The pinnacle of the cosmos stage is the 10th realm power, and you have only reached the 4th realm power, explained the middle-aged man. The power of the world. Wang Ting pondered for a moment and then was suddenly surprised. I've only reached the 4th realm power? There's still such a long way to go to reach the pinnacle. Your limit has not been reached yet, the middle-aged man said with an odd expression. My limit hasn't been reached. Wang Ting was taken aback and asked, do you mean, you can continue merging the origin of a universe? The white-haired middle-aged man took out another origin of a universe and said. Wang Ting stared at the transparent cosmic source, astonished, and said, Master, don't you have only one of this? When did the origin of a universe become so common? Who said I only have one? The middle-aged man said indifferently, this one was casually refined when one passed by another collapsing universe. Wang Ting was speechless. Impressive. Casually refining another origin of a universe, as if it's so easy. This is an origin of a universe, for heaven's sake. It's not something easily refined. This isn't some common energy that you can find anywhere. And how do you keep coming across collapsing universes? Are collapsing universes so easily encountered? Wang Ting didn't know what to say anymore. Sit down, absorb. The middle-aged man with white hair said, paying no mind to what Wang Ting might be thinking. Wang Ting didn't waste any time. He sat down cross-legged obediently and gave an ready expression. This was an origin of a universe, and even if he had already absorbed one, he certainly didn't find it excessive. With a flick of the middle-aged man's finger, the origin of a universe descended onto Wang Teng's head and slowly merged. Once again, Wang Teng experienced a profound shock throughout his body. Strange energies swept through his inner cosmos, causing another transformation. As time passed slowly, the middle-aged man with white hair furrowed his brow slightly, expressing surprise. He still hasn't reached the limit. At his level of cultivation, there shouldn't be much to astonish him, but Wang Ting's current performance still managed to elicit a sense of wonder. This Cosmos stage martial warrior hadn't reached his limit even after absorbing 2 origin of a universe. This completely exceeded his understanding. In his long lifespan, the most talented martial warrior he ever encountered could only absorb 1 origin of a universe when he was at the Cosmos stage. That was the limit. Yet here was Wang Teng, having absorbed 2 and seemingly poised to continue. The middle-aged man's interest was piqued once again. He took out another origin of a universe, the last one he had refined when passing through yet another collapsing universe. As a powerhouse like him had traversed numerous realms, he naturally encountered several collapsing universes. However, this was also his last origin of a universe in reserve. If Wang Ting still didn't reach his limit, he would have to rely on finding another origin of a universe on his own. This young man seemed like an endless abyss. The middle-aged man with white hair placed the 3rd origin of a universe above Wang Teng's head for him to absorb. Wang Teng, who was about to exit his cultivation state, was surprised to feel another origin of a universe erupting within his inner cosmos. He was a bit dazed. What was going on? Another one. Could it be that he still hadn't reached the limit of the Cosmos stage? Wang Ting was thoroughly astonished, but he didn't have the luxury of overthinking. Immediately, he immersed his consciousness once again, beginning to absorb this 3rd origin of a universe. He noticed that this origin of a universe was vastly different from the origin energy of chaos he absorbed in the chaotic Uncharted. The origin of a universe originated from the entire cosmic realm, whereas the origin energy of chaos was influenced by the origin of chaos, existing as a type of energy born in chaos. To obtain the true origin of chaos, one would need to refine the entire cosmic Uncharted. However, the souls of the chaotic beasts were somewhat similar to this origin of a universe, both capable of elevating one's life essence and inducing transformation. When Wang Teng ascended to the Cosmos stage, it was with the assistance of the souls of the chaotic beasts that he reached his limit. That meant that with the help of the chaotic beasts, he had reached the limit of the celestial stage and advanced to the Cosmos stage. Therefore, for Wang Teng to reach the Cosmos stage limit now, he required multiple origins of a universe. As the middle-aged man with white hair had stated, the deeper one's foundation, the stronger their power. However, conversely, advancing to the next realm would become increasingly challenging. With the absorption of the 3rd origin of a universe by Wang Teng, he finally sensed a saturation, emanating from the depths of his soul and his physical body alike. Both his soul essence and physique experienced a swelling sensation. Slowly opening his eyes, he smiled at the middle-aged man with white hair. "Master, I've finally reached the limit." At this moment, Wang Ting's perception of the white-haired middle-aged man underwent a subtle change. It seemed like this man truly regarded him as a disciple. If not, he wouldn't have casually given him 3 precious origin of a universe without a trace of reluctance. Initially seeking backing, Wang Ting now harbored a hint of respect for the man. Well, considering how much he was given, the middle-aged man nodded and said, "You've absorbed 3 balls of origin of a universe in total. Even one have never seen this before. It seems your foundation is even more profound than I imagined." Chapter 2178. Oh my God. Direct Disciple. 2. However, it will be difficult for me to advance to the heaven stage, Wang Ting said with a bitter smile. He glanced at the attributes board. The attributes changed again. Origin of life, 150000 origin of soul, 150000 spirit, 2000003000000, cosmos realm. His origin of life and origin of soul had increased to 150,000 points, and the limit of his spirit attribute had increased to 300,000 points. Wang Teng almost wanted to vomit out the origin of a universe he just absorbed. He still had to continue raising his spiritual attribute by another 100,000 points, which seemed incredibly challenging. Since it's the path you've chosen, you'll have to grit your teeth and complete it even if it's tough, the middle-aged man with white hair said calmly, observing Wang Teng's expression. A faint curve appeared at the corner of his mouth but quickly vanished. Kid, I didn't give you 3 origin of a universe for nothing. I understand, Master, Wang Teng sighed and nodded, accepting his fate. All right, now give it your all and throw another punch, the middle-aged man with white hair said. Wang Teng immediately became focused again, moved to an open space, and threw a punch. With a resounding boom, the void collapsed directly, and a terrifying force burst out, causing formidable fluctuations that directly shattered the surrounding space. The previous punch had only collapsed the space within 1 meter of his fist, but this punch could collapse the space within 3 meters. Not bad, 6th realm power, the middle-aged man with white hair commented. 6th realm power? Didn't you say that the limit of the cosmos stage is the 10th realm? Wang Teng asked in confusion. You've overlooked several other factors, techniques, innate talent, and even your domain, the middle-aged man with white hair explained. 1c. The techniques one practice, my innate talents, and even my domain are still unable to fully unleash my power to the 10th realm power, Wang Teng nodded thoughtfully. You already have the foundation of the 10th realm power, but to fully bring it out, you need various skills and enlightenment. That's the difference between a martial warrior and a brute, the middle-aged man with white hair explained. Wang Teng nodded. What scripture are you practicing? What level is it? The white-haired middle-aged man asked again. It's a scripture one created myself. Wang Teng didn't hide the truth. A self-created scripture. The middle-aged man with white hair raised his eyebrows. His surprise at Wang Teng was growing, and the calmness in his deep gaze had been disrupted multiple times by Wang Teng's revelations. A cosmos stage martial warriors created his scripture, and dared to cultivate it. The middle-aged man with white hair felt that, despite his age, he was encountering an oddity for the first time, expanding his knowledge. Let me see your self-created scripture, he reluctantly said. At this point, he wanted to massage his forehead, but to maintain an image of a superior being in front of Wang Teng, he resisted the urge. Wang Teng, seeing his expression, felt a bit uneasy for some reason. He then silently recited his self-created technique, the Chaos Constellation Scripture. Anyway, aside from him, no one else could cultivate this technique. As Wang Teng silently recited the technique, the middle-aged man with white hair was initially planning to correct and refine it. In his view, a self-created scripture by a cosmos stage martial warrior would likely be full of errors and problems, even if it could be cultivated. However, as Wang Teng continued, the middle-aged man became increasingly shocked. A trace of disbelief appeared in his deep eyes. If the previous 2 instances of surprise were like small ripples, this time it was as if a massive stone had been thrown into a calm lake, creating a tumult that disturbed the fish below. When Wang Teng finished recounting the final word of the Chaos Constellation Scripture, the middle-aged man with white hair fell into contemplation. After a long while, he closed his eyes and seemingly cast Wang Teng aside. Wang Teng? What was going on? His master, who just seemed ready to correct his scripture, was now ignoring him. Wang Teng had no choice but to sit cross-legged in front of the other party and wait quietly. After an unknown amount of time, the middle-aged man with white hair opens his eyes, staring at Wang Teng without saying a word. Master, is there something wrong? Wang Teng asked cautiously, feeling a bit startled. Marvelous! The middle-aged man with white hair suddenly exclaimed. Wang Teng, did you truly create this scripture yourself? The middle-aged man with white hair asked. Yes. Wang Teng nodded. Only to the cosmos stage? The white-haired middle-aged man asked again. Wang Teng nodded again, saying, the next part of the scripture hasn't been deduced yet. It requires a lot of preparation, and I'm still only at the cosmos stage. That's right, you're only at the cosmos stage, the white-haired middle-aged man exclaimed. If it weren't for the undeniable reality and his extensive experience, He would never have believed that such a profound scripture was created by a cosmos stage martial warrior. The middle-aged man with white hair was extremely curious. He sighed in his heart, realizing that this disciple had completely shattered his preconceptions about scriptures built up over many years. However, he couldn't resist asking, "How did you create this technique?" Wang Teng's expression became somewhat strange. Was this master feeling discouraged by him? At the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that there was something wrong with the scripture. It looked like that wasn't the case. Without hiding anything, he straightforwardly recounted the original intention and the process of creating the scripture. The middle-aged man with white hair was surprisingly intrigued, nodding from time to time. He looked at Wang Teng and said, "You have quite the luck." "SOSO." Wang Teng chuckled. "But to create such a technique, your thoughts are truly extraordinary. Even eternal stage martial warriors might not dare to think like this." The middle-aged man with white hair shook his head. "You're too kind," Wang Teng replied. "I can't teach you much about this scripture. We can only discuss it, and 111 share some of my insights with you. One hope it helps you in creating a heaven stage scripture in the future. However, the actual creation process will depend on you. Otherwise, you may be easily influenced by my path," the middle-aged man with white hair said. "That is more than enough." Wang Teng exclaimed in joy. "Master, your insights as a powerful martial warrior are beyond what ordinary martial warriors can compare. They will surely be of great help to me." The middle-aged man with white hair nodded slowly and continued, "Your scripture is based on multiple original forces, merging them to form the chaos force. The process emphasizes balance. I'll take the example of the 5 element forces." Wang Teng became serious, his gaze constantly flickering. He nodded from time to time, interjecting with questions or sharing his own viewpoints. The two of them mutually verified and exchanged thoughts. If anyone who knew the middle-aged man with white hair saw this, they would likely be astonished to see Wang Teng engaged in such deep discussions with him. Time flew by, and they discussed for 10 days and nights, completely forgetting about time. It wasn't until the middle-aged man with white hair slowly stopped that Wang Teng closed his eyes to digest what he had gained. 3 days later, Wang Teng slowly opened his eyes. The radiance in his eyes was restrained, and he stood up, respectfully bowing to the middle-aged man with white hair. "Thank you, Master. It's time for you to leave." The middle-aged man with white hair waved his hand, and a token flew toward Wang Teng. Wang Teng instinctively caught the token and couldn't help but be surprised. When he looked up, he found that the surroundings had instantly changed, just like when he arrived, without any warning when leaving. "Holding this token, you are now my direct disciple. When the day comes for us to meet again, it will be the unveiling of your identity. If anyone from the Stellar Academies asks, show them the token, and they will understand." A voice slowly reached Wang Teng's ears, fading away as he left the mountain and eventually dissipated in the air. Wang Teng looked around and realized he was back at the peak of the spiritual hollow mountain. The president of the 7th Stellar Academy and the 2 God Stage martial warriors from the 7th Stellar Academy were standing not far away. They stared at Wang Teng in surprise. Outside Spiritual Hollow Mountain, the students stared wide-eyed at the scene. In their eyes, Wang Teng had only disappeared for a moment, then returned to the peak of Spiritual Hollow Mountain. "President. Instructors." Wang Teng hurriedly greeted the president and the 2 terrifying presences. The president of the 7th Stellar Academy suddenly saw the token in Wang Teng's hand. His expression changed slightly as he grabbed Wang Teng's shoulder and disappeared on the spot. "Follow me." The 2 God Stage martial warriors exchanged glances with one another before following him. They disappeared from the top of the Spiritual Hollow Mountain. Chapter 2179, Legacy in the Grand Universe Hall. 1. What on earth happened? The people outside the Spiritual Hollow Mountain were astounded when they saw Wang Teng appearing again and getting taken away by the president and the others. They started guessing what happened. At the same time, Spiritual Hollow Mountain vanished before their eyes, leaving them in awe. Silence. An eternal stage martial warrior from the academy stood up and shouted. The crowd immediately quieted down, looking at the eternal stage martial warrior. All the performances of the new students have been observed by the instructors present. Now, the formal apprentice selection begins. Students chosen by the instructors, carefully consider whether you want to take them as your masters. Instructors choose students, and students also choose instructors. No one will force you. The Eternal Stage Martial Warrior said calmly. The new students present were instantly shaken, forgetting about the situation with Wang Teng. Other people's affairs were not as important as their own future. Besides, with Wang Teng absent, their brilliance would not be overshadowed. It was so heartbreaking. Wang Teng's presence in this generation suppressed all the other geniuses, surpassing everyone in talent and strength. They felt despair. At this moment, many new students looked eagerly at the Eternal Stage Martial Warriors with only one thought in their minds: pick me, please pick me. They yearned to become stronger. Having a master was an excellent way to achieve that. If they could choose a suitable strong master, there might be a chance to surpass him in the future. Yuan Mu, are you willing to take me as your master? In the sky, an Eternal Stage ruler gazed at Yuan Mu, and his voice slowly echoed. Although Yuan Mu was not as exceptional as Wang Teng, his talent was still outstanding enough to catch the attention of an Eternal Stage ruler. Eternal Stage rulers were the most powerful among Eternal Stage martial warriors. Despite seeming to have quite a few in the stellar academies, they were priceless figures in the universe. Regardless of where they were in the universe, Eternal Stage rulers were always the top-tier beings. In the absence of God-stage entities, Eternal Stage rulers were the most powerful figures. With a snap of their fingers, they could annihilate an entire star system, showcasing their terrifying might. However, at this moment, Yuan Mu revealed a trace of unwillingness. While Wang Ting was taken away by the president and two God-stage presences, Yuan Mu could only end up accepting an Eternal Stage ruler as his master, and the disparity was too significant. He was too proud, setting his demands too high at the beginning. Now, facing this enormous gap, he found it hard to accept. Yuan Mu, your divine constellation physique is indeed an extremely powerful physique, not inferior to anyone. The method one cultivate coincides with your path. Are you willing to accept me as your master? At this moment, another Eternal Stage ruler stepped forward, speaking. Everyone was envious. Yuan Mu's talent was truly remarkable, attracting the attention and competition of two Eternal Stage rulers. Lu Tian, your path of slaughter aligns with mine. Are you willing to accept me as your mentor? Another Eternal Stage ruler spoke, looking at Lu Tian. Like opening floodgates, one by one, strong figures stepped forward, choosing disciples they favored. Unlike the lively scene in the Grand Universe Hall, it was strangely quiet on Wang Ting's side. The president brought Wang Ting into a quiet great hall. He didn't speak and just looked at him with a complicated gaze. The other two God-stage martial warriors appeared. They looked at the president and then at Wang Teng, falling into silence. Wang Teng, suddenly finding himself here, couldn't help but feel speechless. Couldn't these big shots have given him a heads-up in advance? Without saying a word, they brought him here. He was a person, not a puppet on strings. After silently complaining, he couldn't help but assess the surroundings. He knew this was a hall, but it was extraordinarily peculiar, resembling a starry sky with countless stars. Some formed peculiar constellations, some condensed into shining star rivers spanning the void, and various star clusters, nebulae, and more. Is this the Grand Universe Hall? Wang Ting immediately thought of the Grand Universe Hall in the plaza, as the appearance and name were too fitting, but it was hard to be sure. But soon, he retracted his gaze and looked at the president and the others. He got a shock. 3 God-stage martial warriors were staring straight at him, making him feel a bit uneasy and nervous. Master isn't tricking me, right? Wang Ting wondered to himself. He swallowed his saliva and looked at the president guiltily. President, elders, why are you looking at me like this? Don't be nervous. The president chuckled and asked, where did you just go? Wang Teng didn't hide anything and recounted what happened after leaving Spiritual Hollow Mountain. The president and the 2 God-stage beings had flickering gazes, seemingly with a strange glint in their eyes. When they heard the whole story, a hint of shock appeared on their faces. At their level, there were very few things that could make them feel astonished. But today, something truly remarkable had happened. Beyond the mountain, beyond the sky. What incredible means? Hes far ahead of us. The three God-stage powerhouses exclaimed. In that case, it should be correct. The president sighed and, with a slightly complex expression, looked at Wang Teng, saying, I initially intended to take you as my disciple, but I didn't expect you to catch the eye of that existence. Wait, the president was planning to take me as his disciple? Wang Teng, hearing the president's words, couldn't help but feel a bit regretful. This was the president of the Stellar Academy. If he became his disciple, his status within the academy would be extraordinary. What a pity. However, judging by the president's expression, it seemed like his master might be even more extraordinary. Chapter 2180, Legacy in the Grand Universe Hall. 2. With these thoughts, Wang Ting felt much more balanced. Moreover, it seemed that the president wouldn't trouble him for choosing another master. Wang Ting breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't help but ask curiously, President, do you know who my master is? He was quite curious about his master's identity. Unfortunately, his master loved to play mysterious and wouldn't tell him. It was really annoying. Since he didn't tell you, I can't say much. I can only say that he has an inseparable connection with our stellar academies. The president paced with his hands behind his back and said slowly, when the 7 stellar academies recruit disciples, we can all use 7 stellar academies. The students who enter 7 stellar academies undergo the academy's assessment, but they also face another assessment, which no one knows about. However, it's clear that you've passed it. Assessment. Could it be deciphering spiritual Hollow Mountain? Or reaching the Swinmit? Wang Ting was a bit curious, speculating in his mind. Let me see the token in your hand, the president said. Wang Teng regained his senses and passed the token to the president. After receiving the token, the president carefully examined it in his hand, his expression becoming more complex. For a token to make a God-stage existence, especially the president of the Stellar Academies, to show such a complex expression, indicated that the token was truly extraordinary. Wang Ting hadn't taken a close look at the token since he got it. At this moment, his gaze also fell on the token. The token was entirely purple, adorned with peculiar patterns. The engravings were mysterious, and the token bore no words. Whether on the front or back, it appeared the same, making it impossible to distinguish between the two sides. Indeed, it is him, the dean murmured, returning the token to Wang Teng. Keep it safe. Don't lose it. Being able to have that existence as your master is your destiny. The two true God-stage beings exchanged a glance, hesitant to speak. The disciple they had set their eyes on seemed to have disappeared. It was regrettable and frustrating. They had high hopes for Wang Teng. His talent was undoubtedly the highest among the geniuses they had seen in years, surpassing all others. Unfortunately, such a genius was now beyond their reach. Wang Teng was unaware of the thoughts of the 3 God-stage figures. He simply nodded and pocketed the token. Without the need for the others to explain, he understood the critical importance of the token. Now that he had no idea where his master was, he could only rely on this token to maintain his identity. Judging by the demeanor of the president and the others, it was evident that his master was an influential figure. So, holding on to this token was paramount. Also, when he left, his master seemed to have said, he was taken in as a direct disciple. Originally, he was just a disciple in name, with the possibility of having his status revoked at any time. How did it suddenly change to becoming a direct disciple? Was it because of the Chaos Constellation scripture? Wang Teng's expression was somewhat peculiar. Did his master, after discussing with him for 10 days and nights, finally succumb to his talent? Thus, he directly upgraded him from a disciple in name to a direct disciple. This unexpected change in treatment caught him off guard. Nevertheless, it was a good thing. At least, he was now firmly holding onto this powerful thigh. Unfortunately, he still didn't know his master's name, so he couldn't use his master's identity to act recklessly. Speaking of which, could his master be preventing him from doing so by not revealing his name? For so many years, That person has never taken a disciple before, the president sighed. Never. Were there no others who entered that mountain before? Wang Ting asked curiously. At least, no one within our 7 stellar academies has ever entered, the president asserted. No one has entered before. It doesn't seem very difficult. Wang Ting was surprised. He entered that mountain without even understanding what was going on. The president and the other 2 God-stage martial warriors were speechless. This kid had quite the audacity. If it wasn't difficult, why would no one have entered for so many years? That was all the geniuses from the 7 stellar academies over the years, including those with astonishing talents that amazed the entire universe. However, without exception, none of them could gain recognition to enter that mountain. This indicated the immense difficulty involved. However, they couldn't refute it because Wang Ting had indeed entered that mountain and successfully become a disciple. Of course, they wouldn't argue with a junior over such matters. President, can one still seek another master? Wang Ting asked, his eyes twinkling. You still want to find another master? The president was caught between laughter and tears. Well, my master isn't around, so can't I find another mentor who can guide me in his absence? Wang Ting casually remarked. The 2 God-stage martial warriors were speechless again. Their expressions turned strange. If they had such a disciple who, immediately after becoming a disciple, turned around and sought another master, they might consider slapping this rebellious disciple on the spot. Is it not allowed? Wang Ting asked. Forget about it. If your master finds out about this, he might kick you out. No. He might slap you to death. The president glanced at Wang Ting and said, in the future, you can continue to cultivate at the stellar academies as usual. If there's anything you don't understand, you can seek guidance from the academy's instructors. I'll make sure they provide you with all the assistance and guidance you need. Chapter 2181, Legacy in the Grand Universe Hall. 3. Really? Wang Ting's eyes lit up. He had never intended to seek another master. This was just a ploy to gain some advantages. Unexpectedly, it turned into a pleasant surprise. Good lad, you dare to trick me. The president also realized this clever student had outfoxed him. He pointed at Wang Ting, chuckling and shaking his head. The 2 true God-stage beings also found it amusing. They increasingly felt that Wang Ting was to their liking. Unfortunately, this outstanding disciple had been taken away, and they couldn't get him back. It was truly frustrating. I'm speaking the truth. One didn't trick you. Wang Ting chuckled. Also, I'm a student of stellar academies. With my talent, if it goes to waste, don't you think it would be a pity? You little kid, now you're praising yourself. The president couldn't help but laugh. President, mark my words. Today, I take pride in being a member of the 7th Stellar Academy. In the future, I will make sure the Academy takes pride in having me. Wang Ting declared solemnly. All right, I'll remember your words. One want to see how you make the Academy proud. The president looked at him deeply. Although he had said similar things to all new students on the plaza of the Grand Universe Hall, his requirements for Wang Ting were different now. Making the Stellar Academies genuinely proud of a student was no easy task. Wang Ting didn't say much. He had enough confidence in himself. As long as he became powerful enough, everything would fall into place. Well, you don't need to worry. What I said earlier still stands, the president reassured him. Thank you. Wang Ting expressed his gratitude. No need to thank me. Consider this your reward for reaching the summit of the spiritual Hollow Mountain. The president grinned like an old fox. Wang Ting opened his mouth, feeling a bit speechless. Did he gain or lose in the end? The president, amused by his embarrassed expression, suddenly asked, Do you know where you are? Wang Ting smiled bitterly in his heart, returned to reality, and hesitated before saying, The Grand Universe Hall? Yes, this is the Grand Universe Hall. The president nodded and said, The Grand Universe Hall is our 7 Stellar Academy's most important legacy ground. Since I brought you in, it's not just a random place to chat. Legacy ground. Wang Ting was stunned. The Grand Universe Hall turned out to be a legacy ground. A gleam of light flashed in his eyes. Did the president bring him here for? This is the mystery reward I'm giving you. The president chuckled. Wang Ting's eyes instantly lit up, and he hurriedly said, President, from now on, you are the person I most admire in this stellar academy, the guiding light on my life's path. Stop buttering me up. The president couldn't help but shake his head with a wry smile. Wang Ting, if the president is the person you most admire, what are we? The God-stage martial warrior with lightning force shimmering around him gave an ambiguous smile. All of you. All of you. Wang Ting said awkwardly. Ha ha ha, the three true God-stage beings couldn't help but burst into laughter. All right, enough of the small talk. The president shook his head, restrained his laughter, and waved his hand. Suddenly, Wang Ting felt the surrounding scenery rapidly retreating, countless stars turning into dazzling lights, giving off a dreamlike feeling. Each of these stars represents a legacy. What kind of legacy you can obtain depends on your luck. Remember, you can only choose one. Chapter 2182. You can get attributes from everything. Star Formula Scripture. 1. Countless streams of light passed by Wang Ting as numerous stars in the Grand Universe Hall began to retreat. After an unknown amount of time, Wang Ting gradually came to a stop, only to find that the surroundings had once again turned into the universe. However, this sky was different from the one he had seen before. The constellations, nebulae, and other celestial formations around him were clearly distinct from the previous starry scene. What a mysterious technique! Wang Ting observed the surroundings and couldn't help but marvel. He then looked around, transformed into a stream of light, and rushed toward one of the stars. Every star is a legacy. I can only choose one legacy. I don't know how to choose. Let's take a casual look first. Wang Ting quickly arrived in front of the nearest star, hesitated for a moment, and activated his real eye to examine it. With the help of his real eye, the star seemed to shed its surface appearance, revealing its true form. Beneath that starlight, there were strange runes, forming chains that entwined around the star. Wang Ting's eyes flickered with a peculiar light. After some contemplation, he extended his spiritual power to make contact with the star. Boom! A roar echoed in his mind, followed by fragmented and chaotic information. So-called legacy turns out to be the insights left behind by martial warriors. The star in front of me contains the insights left by an earth element martial warrior, including scripture, battle techniques, and even domain insights. A glint of brilliance flashed in Wang Ting's eyes. However, this inheritance was only equivalent to that of a heaven-stage martial warrior and wasn't considered too powerful. Wang Ting's gaze turned towards the deeper parts of the universe. According to normal rules, the stronger the legacy, the deeper it would be located. Just as he was about to rush towards the deeper parts of the universe, he suddenly stopped in his tracks, rubbing his chin in thought. I wonder if one can profit from this. In Wang Ting's eyes, he could get attributes from everything. As long as it was a treasure, regardless of whether he could profit from it or not, he wanted to give it a try. So, Wang Ting decided to experiment. He condensed his spiritual power into a stick and thrust it towards the star in front of him. This was the experience he gained from farming attributes on the spiritual Hollow Mountain. No matter what it was, poking at it was the way to go. Boom! A resounding boom suddenly emanated from the light sphere, louder than before. A unique force fluctuation swept out, creating a counterforce that directly shook Wang Ting away. Wang Ting didn't mind. His gaze was fixed on the glowing sphere, and his eyes lit up. Sure enough, several attribute bubbles emerged, floating around the light sphere. A slight curve appeared at the corner of Wang Ting's mouth. His spiritual power swept out, immediately picking up those attribute bubbles. Star Earth Scripture, Cosmos Stage, *30 Earth Domain *60 Earth Domain *50. There weren't many attribute bubbles, but Wang Ting was surprised. Star Earth Scripture. Wang Ting closed his eyes. A hologram appeared in his mind, sitting cross-legged and cultivating the Star Earth Scripture. And it was the Cosmos Stage Star Earth Scripture. Wang Ting had previously obtained Planetary Stage and Celestial Stage Star Earth Scriptures, and now he had acquired the advanced version. When he created the Chaos Constellation scripture, he used this scripture as a reference. He had early on discovered that this scripture was a complete set, including attributes like metal, wood, water, fire, earth, lightning, and ice. As for whether there were other attributes, he wasn't sure. But just the connection between these attributes provided him with a lot of insights. He speculated that the person who created these scriptures probably wanted to start from the easy and progress to the difficult. They initially created single scriptures, moving from low level to high level, and finally, merged them. Whether the other person succeeded in the fusion, Wang Teng didn't know, but these techniques greatly inspired him. Now, he wanted to push the Chaos Constellation scripture to the heaven stage. This Cosmos stage Star-Earth scripture came just in time. However, the thought of collecting scriptures for the other attributes made Wang Ting feel a bit annoyed. There were so many of them. Everything depended on luck. There were many legacies in the Universal Hall, and encountering the Star-Earth scripture in the very first one suggested the possibility of finding corresponding legacies ahead. Perhaps there were more fortuitous encounters awaiting Wang Ting. Retracting his thoughts, he glanced at the other two domain attribute bubbles. The Earth domain, with a total of only no attribute points, was not particularly abundant, but it was better than nothing. Wang Ting's domain was at the 7th rank. Further advancement wasn't an easy task. It required gradual progress. Then, he looked at the star in front of him, hesitated for a moment, and decided against it. There were many legacy stars here, and there was no need to grab onto one recklessly. Focusing too much on collecting attributes from one star might attract the attention of the president and others. Moreover, he estimated that he wouldn't stay in this grand universe hall for too long and needed to make the most of his time. With these thoughts in mind, Wang Ting swiftly moved towards another star. These stars had their differences. The previous one, with a faint yellow halo inside, was undoubtedly the legacy of an earth element martial warrior. The current star emitted a gentle blue halo, unmistakably representing the legacy of a water element martial warrior. Following the same procedure, Wang Ting condensed his spiritual power into a staff and fiercely thrust it forward. Boom! After a resounding roar, a unique force swept out. Unlike the previous time when he was shaken away, this time he staunchly withstood the impact, remaining steadfast in his position. Chapter 2183, You Can Get Attributes from Everything, Star Formula Scripture. 2. Attribute bubbles dropped and he picked them up. Water Element Scripture, Heaven Stage, *IOO Water Domain *20 Water Domain *30 Wang Ting shook his head with a hint of disappointment, then without lingering, he rushed towards another distant legacy star. What is this little guy doing? The God Stage martial warrior enveloped in flames furrowed his brow, puzzled. He should be searching for a suitable inheritance for himself, the God Stage martial warrior surrounded by lightning casually remarked. Searching them one by one like this, how long will it take him? It would be better to head directly to deeper areas, the God Stage martial warrior said in a somewhat exasperated tone. This little guy's actions are often perplexing, but in the end, it seems he's not wasting his time, the president mused. President, are you perhaps a bit too optimistic about this little guy? The God Stage fire element martial warrior questioned. Ha ha ha, the president laughed. How about we make a bet? Oh, what are we betting on? The God Stage fire element martial warrior showed a surprised expression. He was intrigued. The president rarely made bets with anyone, so this occasion was a rare opportunity, and he couldn't afford to miss it. Besides, the president was well known for possessing many valuable items. Any small wager would likely make them envious. The Lightning God Stage martial warrior also became interested and looked toward the president. I have 2 blood dragon wood here. I bet he will obtain a God Stage legacy. If I lose, these blood dragon wood will be yours. The president revealed 2 peculiar blood-red plants in his hands. The 2 God Stage martial warriors were astounded. The 2 blood-red plants emitted a strong blood aura, their trunks resembling that of a true dragon, with a majestic and twisted appearance. Blood dragon woods. It said that these trees grow by bathing in dragon blood, and the medicinal liquid extracted from them contains the essence of dragon blood. President, you're going all out, offering 2 of them at once, the fire god stage martial warrior remarked. The legacy of a god stage martial warrior? President, you're quite ambitious. He's only at the cosmos stage. How can he obtain a god stage legacy? The lightning god stage martial warrior shook his head. What will you 2 bet against me? The president remained unfazed, merely smiling. I don't have many treasures equivalent to the blood dragon wood on me. The fire god stage martial warrior pondered for a moment, then hesitated as he said, how about this 5-colored soil? 5-colored soil. The president was surprised. He nodded and continued, 5-colored soil can cultivate eternal level and above plant life, making it quite a rare treasure. It's my turn. The lightning god stage martial warrior chuckled, producing an item and saying, this is thunder tribulation elixir, refined from the calamity lightning. It has a tempering effect, beneficial for cultivators beyond the eternal stage. Thunder tribulation elixir. The president and the fire god stage martial warrior stared at the liquid in astonishment. This was an exceedingly rare substance. Thunder tribulation elixir only formed during lightning calamities, and not every lightning calamity produced it. The chances were very slim. Generally, only those at the universe stage or above who attracted calamity lightning would yield thunder tribulation elixir, and its efficacy was also related to the strength of the calamity lightning. The stronger the calamity lightning, the more potent the thunder tribulation elixir born from it. Moreover, only powerful lightning element martial warriors could extract it. The god stage martial warrior's thunder tribulation elixir was obviously refined from a calamity lightning, and as a god stage being, what he produced was not to be underestimated. Well done. This item would indeed be of great help to us. The fire god stage martial warrior nodded. I didn't expect you to be willing to bring it out this time. If the president is willing to offer treasures like blood dragon woods, and your 5-colored soil isn't ordinary either, how could one be unwilling to bring out this thunder tribulation elixir? One can endure a bit more hardship during the next calamity lightning if needed. The lightning god stage martial warrior replied. Let's see if he can get the god stage legacy, the president smiled and said. Within the Grand Universe Hall, Wang Ting sped swiftly, his pace considerably faster than before. Racing through, his spiritual power condensed into successive sticks, fiercely stabbing toward the legacy stars. He had now mastered the 3 principles of farming attribute. Fast, accurate, ruthless. Without any hesitation. After a day of diligent efforts, he had finally plundered over 100 legacy stars, reaping quite a fruitful harvest. At this point, he had gathered all 5 elemental attributes of the star formula scripture. The legacy stars in the Grand Universe Hall indeed held these star formula scriptures, living up to his expectations. Unfortunately, he hadn't come across any star formula scriptures with special attributes yet, leaving him somewhat frustrated. Boom! Wang Ting thrust his spiritual power stick into an enormous and dazzling star, and immediately, a surge of impact swept over him, knocking him back. Such formidable impact! Wang Ting was astonished. This impact was much stronger than before. At this moment, several massive attribute bubbles dropped down, and Wang Ting's eyes lit up. His spiritual power swept out, immediately picking them up. Star Lightning Scripture, Cosmos Stage, *I50 Star Lightning Scripture, Cosmos Stage, *20 Lightning Domain *300 Lightning Domain *200 Origin of Lightning *IO Star Lightning Scripture. Wang Ting's eyes lit up. Speak of the devil. After finding attributes for so long, Wang Ting finally encountered a star formula scripture with a special attribute. Moreover, the domain attributes seemed to be significantly more abundant than the previous legacy stars. There was even the origin of lightning. This wasn't something a heaven stage legacy constellation could have. A universe stage legacy star. Wang Ting looked at the legacy star and immediately noticed some discrepancies, feeling a bit surprised. Previously, the legacy stars he encountered were all at the heaven stage, and compared to this one, they were noticeably smaller. He couldn't help but halt his steps and look around. Soon, he discovered several legacy stars that were obviously larger and more dazzling than the Heaven Stage ones. Without any hesitation, Wang Ting quickly rushed towards those Universe Stage stars. Without a doubt, he would get more attributes from the Universe Stage legacy stars. When Wang Ting approached one of the Universe Stage legacy stars, he couldn't help but be stunned, exclaiming, "This is a legacy star of the light element." He immediately became interested. He controlled his spiritual power stick more cautiously this time and fiercely stabbed it. He was much more careful this time, poking and immediately retreating, avoiding the peculiar fluctuations that swept out from the legacy star. Attribute bubbles fell. Get them. Starlight Scripture, Cosmos Stage, *I60 Starlight Scripture, Cosmos Stage, *I80 Light Domain *500 Light Domain *30 Origin of Light *20 Star Formula Scripture. It looks like I'm quite lucky. I have another star formula scripture, and it's a rare light element scripture. Wang Ting was surprised and elated. He had never received this light element star formula scripture before. This time, he received the Cosmos Stage star formula scripture directly. He was extremely lucky. Simultaneously, as the remaining attribute bubbles merged into Wang Ting's consciousness, related insights emerged. Light domain, origin of light. Wang Ting suddenly felt that his light domain seemed to have broken through a certain barrier, reaching a new level. Light domain, 4005,000, 5th rank. His light domain had already reached the pinnacle of the 4th rank, and it had finally advanced to the 5th rank. The formidable power of the light domain was beyond doubt. During the battle with Tai Beisho, her use of the light domain was quite impressive. Initially, Wang Ting's light domain was inferior to hers, but now, he felt that the difference wasn't that significant. Next time, if he were to battle Tai Beisho again, his light domain would be enough to surprise her. Besides that, there was the origin of light. Wang Ting already had the origin of light, and the additional 20 attribute points this time further enhanced his understanding. Wang Ting couldn't help but hesitate. Should he continue poking this legacy star? After all, this was the light element. It was hard to come by. In the end, he sighed and gave up the idea. Instead, he rushed towards the next Universe Stage legacy star. One by one, the surrounding Universe Stage legacy stars were quickly sheared by Wang Ting. In addition to lightning and light elements, he also obtained an ice element star formula scripture. Counting them, he now possessed 8 star formula scriptures. I still lack poison and wind elements. One wonder if there are any here. Wang Ting furrowed his brow, scanning his surroundings. These 2 types of inheritance stars were not common, especially the poison element legacy star. Wang Ting had yet to come across one. Chapter 2184, Wang Ting's wind talent is the strongest. 1. Translator, Knai Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Wang Ting was extremely curious about the star formula scripture. He really wanted to know what would happen if he could collect all the scriptures. Coincidentally, Wang Ting encountered the star formula scriptures in the legacies of the Grand Universe Hall this time. If he didn't harvest all the scriptures, it would be a shame to waste such a great opportunity. As he moved forward, his gaze swept the surroundings. He activated the real eye, prioritizing the search for poison and wind element legacy stars. Suddenly, his gaze condensed as he spotted a distant legacy star emitting a faint, ghostly green light. It was far away, almost at the limit of his line of sight. Without hesitation, Wang Ting instantly rushed towards it. Time was of the essence, and there was no room for delay. In an instant, he arrived in front of the legacy star, which radiated a faint ghostly green light. His spiritual power condensed into a stick 11 and thrust forward. Boom! Ripples of ghostly green waves spread from the inheritance star, shaking the surroundings. Within the fluctuations, a potent toxic force was present. If it weren't for a poison element martial warrior, they probably couldn't withstand the impact of such a toxic force. Therefore, the choice of legacy stars, including their stage, was a crucial consideration for martial warriors. Not everyone was like Wang Ting, for whom the choice of legacy stars had almost no impact. For instance, this legacy star contained the legacy of a universe stage martial warrior. The toxic force contained within would have a significant impact on ordinary Cosmos Stage martial warriors and even Heaven Stage martial warriors. However, Wang Teng, with his Demon Lotus poison body, did not need to worry about this toxic force. The only thing he needed to endure was the terrifying impact. The impact generated by a Universe Stage Legacy Star was enough to send him flying. So, Wang Teng didn't resist directly. Instead, he evaded until the impact nearly disappeared, then proceeded to collect the attribute bubbles. Standing at a distance, Wang Teng watched as attribute bubbles dropped from the Legacy Star. His eyes gleamed and he released his spiritual power immediately to collect them. Star Poison Scripture, Cosmos Stage, * 2000 Star Poison Scripture, Cosmos Stage, * 1700 Poison Domain * 120 Poison Domain * IO Origin of Poison * 50 Star Poison Scripture. It's here. Wang Teng was elated. After searching for a long time, he finally found a legacy star that gave him the Star Poison Scripture. It wasn't easy. Wang Teng felt elated. At the same time, in his mind, an image of a figure seated in meditation appeared, practicing the Star Poison Scripture. Wang Teng noticed that these scriptures were not exceptionally profound compared to the Universe Stage and Eternal Stage scriptures he had acquired. However, they possessed unique characteristics that set them apart. What made them particularly valuable was the interconnection between each scripture, something that higher-level techniques lacked. Fortunately for Wang Teng, the Star Poison Scripture attribute dropped from this legacy star carried a substantial attribute value of 3,700 points. This allowed him to master the scripture from the foundation to the specialized level in one fell swoop. Additionally, there were some poison domain attributes. While Wang Teng had already mastered several poison domains, including a mixed poison domain, most were at the 3rd rank. Among them, the purest poison domain had reached the 7th rank, making further improvements challenging. The attribute value dropped by this Universe Stage Legacy Star was not substantial since Wang Teng had only scratched the surface. He had not truly obtained the corresponding legacy. Lastly, there was the Origin of Poison, with significantly more points than the previously acquired Power of Origin, totaling 500 points. Perhaps it was due to Wang Teng's lower level of the Power of Poison Origin. Origin of Poison 1110,000, 1st rank. Wang Teng didn't pay too much attention to these enhancements. After collecting everything, he continued searching for the legacy stars that suited his needs. In another dimension of the Grand Universe Hall, 3 God Stage entities stood silently in place, their gazes seemingly penetrating the space, observing Wang Teng's figure navigating the starry expanse. For the better part of the day, they remained nearly motionless. A brief moment for them akin to a few breaths in their extended lifetimes. However, Wang Teng's every move caught their interest, especially since the ultimate outcome of their bet hinged on it. The 3 treasures at stake were far from ordinary, and losing would undoubtedly leave them feeling the pinch for a considerable rhyme. The president lightly stroked his graying beard, a faint smile playing on his lips, exuding an air of confidence. The other 2 God Stage entities also found their spirits uplifted, as, so far, Wang Teng had only been lingering among Universe Stage Legacy stars. He was still a considerable distance from the God Stage legacies the president had mentioned. "President, you're probably going to lose. My Thunder Tribulation Elixir can be saved now," the Lightning God Stage figure remarked with a cheerful smile. "Securing the acknowledgement of a legacy isn't as easy as you think. It seems he understands his limitations. If he can't subdue even a Universe Stage legacy, how can he aspire to conquer a God Stage one?" the Fire God Stage presence added. "Don't be in a hurry. It's still early," the president said with a faint smile. The 2 God Stage entities exchanged surprised glances. Even at this point, the president maintained an air of confidence, leaving them genuinely astonished. "However, we should give him a fixed time. Otherwise, he might keep dragging it out." The president shook his head and transmitted his voice directly into Wang Teng's ears. "Wang Teng, you only have 3 days. If you can't find your legacy within 3 days, you must leave." Chapter 2185. Wang Teng's wind talent is the strongest. 2. On the other side, Wang Teng was shocked. Damn it. I knew it. He expected this, but he couldn't help but complain when he knew that there were only 3 days. The president was so stingy. Couldn't they give him a few more days with so many legacies? Wang Ting's heart was bleeding. But regardless of his complaints, Wang Ting dared not express them. He could only accelerate his search with a sense of resignation. When Wang Ting focused all his attention on finding wind element legacy stars, he finally made some progress. This took him half a day. During this period, Wang Ting found a total of 4 wind element legacy stars, each of which he probed with his spiritual power. The first 2 wind element legacy stars were heaven stage stars, dropping heaven stage scripture attributes and corresponding domain attributes. The latter 2 were universe stage legacy stars, dropping universe stage scripture attributes and some domain and origin attributes. But not a single one was the star formula scripture he was looking for. Why don't I have any luck? Wang Ting furrowed his brows, feeling a bit frustrated. Adding the previous half-day, he had already wasted a day. With only 2 days left, finding a suitable legacy in this vast array seemed uncertain. Wang Ting took a deep breath. Wind element legacy stars were hard to come by. After half a day of searching, he found only 4. He decided to give it another 3 hours. He might have to give up if he couldn't find a suitable wind element legacy star with the star formula scripture within that time frame. Next, he would have to search for a genuine legacy, rather than wasting time here. Wang Ting increased his speed to the maximum, swiftly traversing the starry expanse. In just over 2 hours, he had delved deep into the starry space, encountering numerous legacy stars along the way, including some universe stage ones. But he could only cast a reluctant glance at them and move on without looking back. These were not the wind element legacy stars he was searching for. Ha ha ha. The lightning god stage presence burst out laughing when he saw this scene. This little guy seems to be frightened. Look at him, not daring to waste any more time. If we don't pressure him a bit, he probably would still be wandering around in front, the president said. What is this little guy doing exactly? Just now, I saw him using his spiritual force to probe all the legacy stars of various attributes. Yes, that's right, probing. The fire god stage martial warriors gave a strange look. After a moment of contemplation, he found a word to describe Wang Teng's actions. Probing. The lightning god stage martial warrior was stunned. He hadn't paid attention to these details, merely thinking that Wang Teng was investigating the legacy stars. Even the president, hearing the word used by the fire god stage martial warrior, had his hand trembling slightly, almost pulling out a tuft of his beard. Probing. What a good use of this word. It sounded indecent. Do you guys not think so? The fire god stage martial warrior asked. It does seem a bit like that, the lightning element god stage martial warrior speculated. Perhaps this is his unique way of investigation. It's just a bit peculiar. The fire god stage martial warrior chuckled. Was it just a bit peculiar? It was downright special. Who would use probing to investigate something? Let's not bother with what methods he uses. He has been searching for so long. Has he still not found a suitable inheritance? The fire god stage martial warrior frowned. Judging by the looks of it, it seems that universe stage legacies might not satisfy his appetite, the lightning god stage martial warrior said, his gaze flashing slightly. Could he be aiming for eternal stage legacies? The fire god stage martial warrior pondered. He didn't think that Wang Ting would look for the legacy of a god stage martial warrior. Even though Wang Ting's talent was indeed impressive, the difference in strength was always there. It would be absurd for a cosmos stage warrior to obtain a god stage legacy, pure nonsense. The president remained silent throughout, wearing a faint smile, calmly watching Wang Ting. He was also eager to see what Wang Ting could achieve. Could he create another miracle? At a certain moment, Wang Ting's figure suddenly halted, coming to an abrupt stop. A dazzling wind element legacy star appeared before his eyes. The intense azure glow was so vivid that he could almost see it clearly without resorting to using his real eye. The eternal stage legacy star. This was, at the very least, an eternal stage legacy star. He took a deep breath, cautiously approaching, like a thief preparing to steal a bird's egg. For some reason, he felt a slight excitement. Perhaps it was the first time encountered an Eternal Stage Legacy Star, and he had no idea what would happen if he gave it a poke. Heh! At the moment Wang Ting discovered the Eternal Stage Legacy Star, the three God Stage presences couldn't help but let out a surprised sound. He found an Eternal Stage Wind Element Legacy Star. "This little guy is quite lucky," said the Fire God Stage Martial Warrior said. After searching for so long, he finally found an Eternal Stage Legacy Star. "I thought he could only find Universe Stage Legacy Stars," the Lightning God Stage Martial Warrior remarked. "You underestimate him. This little one's talent is not limited to this extent," the president suddenly said. "Oh!" The two God Stage Martial Warriors were surprised. Generally speaking, the higher the talent, the easier it is to sense corresponding attribute legacy stars. While Wang Ting's talent is comprehensive, there should still be variations. It's impossible for him to find high-level legacy stars for every attribute. If that were the case, it would be too incredible, the Fire God Stage Martial Warrior analyzed. That's right. No matter how talented you are, it's impossible for all your talents to be so powerful. The Lightning God Stage Martial Warrior nodded. He agreed with the Fire God Stage Martial Warrior on this matter. Wang Ting having talents across all elements was already extraordinary, but if every talent were exceptionally powerful, it would transcend the realm of being extraordinary. I initially thought his talents in the lightning and fire elements were the strongest, but now it seems his talent in the wind element might be the most potent, the Fire God Stage Martial Warrior said, his eyes flashing subtly. That's not necessarily true, the president chuckled. You're placing too much confidence in him. The two God Stage entities sighed with a wry smile. They had noticed that whenever they pointed out Wang Ting's flaws, the president would come out to counter their opinions. It seemed he was more protective of this young man than his real disciples. Of course, it wasn't that they lacked confidence in Wang Ting. They were just being realistic. Let's continue observing, the president said with a meaningful glint in his eyes. Wang Ting approached the colossal blue star, taking a deep breath and preparing himself. If anything went wrong, he would immediately retreat. An Eternal Stage Legacy Star was undoubtedly not easy to deal with. Wang Ting took a deep breath, controlled his spiritual power, and fiercely poked it out. With a resounding boom, a tremendously formidable wave emanated from the Legacy Star. Damn it! Wang Ting's figure flickered, attempting to dodge the terrifying shockwave, but he was a step too late. This Legacy Star belonged to the wind element, and the unique force it contained naturally possessed the characteristics of wind force. That is, speed. A shockwave swept through like a fierce wind, violently blasting Wang Ting away. He retreated a distance of 10,000 meters before coming to a stop. The Eternal Stage Legacy Star is so powerful. Wang Ting's expression changed. He didn't dare to underestimate it. He just wanted to get some attribute bubbles, but he faced such a tremendous counterforce. Obtaining the legacy within would likely be extremely challenging. Ha ha ha, the two God Stage Martial Warriors burst out laughing when they saw this scene. Seeing Wang Ting suffer made them inexplicably happy. This guy was quite audacious, and this time, he had finally met his match. Unaware of the three God Stage beings mocking him behind his back, Wang Ting's gaze was completely drawn to the attribute bubbles dropped by the Eternal Stage Legacy Star. These bubbles were significantly larger than the ones dropped by the previous Universe Stage Legacy Stars, clearly indicating their substantial content. However, Wang Ting felt a bit regretful. The Eternal Stage Legacy Star was too high level, so it probably wouldn't drop a Cosmos Stage Star formula scripture. Never mind. Pick them up first, then think about it. He shook his head, choosing not to dwell on it. He picked up the enormous attribute bubbles. 9 Heavens Imperial Wind Scripture * 309 Heavens Imperial Wind Scripture * 2500 Star Wind Scripture, Cosmos Stage, * 220 Star Wind Scripture, Cosmos Stage, * I80 Wind Domain, Actualization Phase, * 50 Wind Domain, Actualization Phase, * 3500 Origin of Wind * 300 Origin of Wind * 400 Eternal Matter * I50 My God, Wang Teng's eyes widened. This was a huge gain. Chapter 2186 Chronicles of Time. 1. Wang Teng was astounded by the attribute bubbles dropped by the eternal stage wind element legacy star. 9 Heavens Imperial Wind Scripture. This was an eternal stage wind element scripture. As the attribute bubbles merged into his consciousness, a humanoid figure materialized. This figure possessed intricate cyan meridians coursing through its body. An astonishing cyan force enveloped his body like a 9-headed dragon. Wang Teng was enlightened. He swiftly grasped the essence of this eternal stage wind element scripture, the 9 Heavens Imperial Wind Scripture. 9 Heavens Imperial Wind Scripture, Eternal Stage 5508,000, Foundation. However, the 5,500 attribute points only allowed Wang Teng to attain a foundation-level mastery. To further advance, he needed either to continue accumulating points or allocate blank attribute points. What caught Wang Teng by surprise was the second scripture, the one he had been seeking relentlessly, the Star Wind Scripture. Another figure appeared in Wang Teng's mind, demonstrating the cultivation of this cosmos stage scripture. Compared to the 9 Heavens Imperial Wind Scripture, this scripture was merely cosmos stage and naturally inferior, yet Wang Teng felt a sense of delight. He searched high and low for the scripture, but here it was. After searching tirelessly and finding nothing, he unexpectedly discovered this scripture within the Eternal Stage Legacy Star. Perhaps the formidable martial warrior who left behind this Eternal Stage Legacy once dedicated himself to mastering the Star Wind Scripture. At this moment, Wang Teng had essentially collected all the star formula scriptures for each attribute, leaving only the Dark Force. As the last scripture, Wang Teng's joy was unparalleled, surpassing even that of acquiring the 9 Heavens Imperial Wind Scripture. He couldn't help but anticipate the fusion of these star formula scriptures, but he knew the timing was not right. Therefore, he reluctantly set the matter aside, planning to thoroughly study these cosmos stage scriptures after returning. Besides scriptures, there were domain attributes too. This time, the domain attribute gave Wang Teng a pleasant surprise. The actualization phase. The wind domain he got from this Eternal Stage Legacy Star was an actualization phase domain. There were 8,500 points of attributes in total. It was a substantial amount. Wind domain, 2,500 4,000, 4th rank actualization phase. Wang Teng's wind domain was originally an ordinary domain and it was at the 4th rank. However, with the recent acquisition of the actualization phase domain, it leaped to the 4th tank too, instantly aligning with the normal wind domain. Obtaining a new actualization phase domain filled Wang Teng with great joy, recognizing the immense superiority of an actualization phase domain over a regular one. Wang Teng could now confidently affirm that only universe stage powerhouses wielded actualization phase domains. Most heaven stage martial warriors, in contrast, were only capable of commanding normal domains. Then, there was the origin of wind. There were 700 points of it. Origin of wind, 8,310,000, 1st rank. Wang Teng's grasp of the origin of wind was formidable, approaching the pinnacle of the 1st rank. He might soon break through to the 2nd rank. Finally, there were 15 points of eternal matter attributes. While the attribute value wasn't particularly high, the eternal matter was a special material possessed only by eternal stage powerhouses. Wang Teng had acquired a small amount through his assistance in refining the Yin-Yang Dragon Essence Pill for 2 eternal stage experts in a previous endeavor. Unexpectedly, this time he obtained it directly from the Eternal Stage Legacy Star. It was a significant and unexpected gain. As the eternal matter melded into Wang Teng's inner cosmos, it seemed to fuse with his soul, adding a unique characteristic to his spiritual essence. After sensing it briefly and noting no significant changes compared to the last time, he regretfully dismissed the matter and moved on. Well then, I've finally collected all the star formula scriptures. Now, it's time for me to seek the true legacy I need. He cast a glance at the Eternal Stage Legacy Star before slowly drifting backward. While the legacy before him was not bad, he could only choose one. Naturally, he couldn't afford to squander such an exceptional opportunity on a mere Eternal Stage legacy. Disdainful. If he was going to seek, he would seek the best. His goal was the God Stage legacy. It had to be admitted that in this regard, the president had a remarkably profound insight. He foresaw early on that he would opt for a God-stage legacy. This time, Wang Teng didn't rush to search. The previous questing process had made him realize a crucial issue. It seemed that these stellar constellations of legacies required talent for sensing. One couldn't simply search aimlessly. In the beginning, there were too many legacy stars, making sensing unnecessary since they were everywhere. Wang Teng, eager to explore all the possibilities, naturally didn't bother with such details. However, after questing for quite some time and finding only one eternal stage legacy star, he suddenly became aware of the problem. If he continued searching, he might not be able to find a God stage legacy star. If even eternal stage legacy stars were so rare, finding a God stage one would be an even greater challenge. Wang Ting closed his eyes, pondering for a moment. Despite having various talents, he could only choose one. A decision had to be made. His consciousness involuntarily delved into the attributes board to review his talents. The various force talents required no elaboration. They were the most common talents. More notably, there were physique talents. Wang Teng possessed numerous physique talents, among them the potent and promising demon lotus poison body, the spiritual wood divine physique, the true dragon battle physique, and many others. However, the two most powerful talents were likely the time and space talent. Chapter 2187 Chronicles of Time. 2. A glint flashed in Wang Teng's eyes. It remained unknown whether the Grand Universe Hall housed legacies related to time and space. If there was, that would be great. There was no better legacy than time and space. The opportunity to enter the Grand Universe Hall was exceedingly rare, and Wang Teng was uncertain when the next chance would present itself. He had to seize the moment. What is Wang Teng doing? The Fire God Stage martial warrior observed the scene, unable to suppress his curiosity. He seems to be uninterested in this Wind Element Eternal Stage legacy. The Lightning God Stage martial warrior hesitated for a moment before responding. He doesn't want a Wind Element Eternal Stage legacy. The Fire God Stage martial warrior was speechless. He couldn't decide if Wang Ting was overestimating himself or if his courage was commendable. If he missed this legacy, there was no guarantee he would find a better one next time. In the end, Wang Teng decided to attempt sensing with his time talent first. Time talents were exceptionally rare, and if he could obtain a corresponding legacy, it would be the most significant gain of this endeavor. Should he acquire a legacy related to time talent, he would no longer crudely wield time power. Instead, he could systematically utilize the power of time. With closed eyes, he activated his time talent. Peculiar ripples emanated from his body, spreading outward. Thankfully, the three God Stage entities were not present in this spatial region. Otherwise, they would have been profoundly shocked. The extraordinary fluctuations emanating from Wang Ting's body at this moment were none other than the power of time. A Cosmos Stage martial warrior, unexpectedly wielding the power of time. This was something not even a God Stage martial warrior dared to imagine. Before long, Wang Teng furrowed his brows. He couldn't sense anything. Is it because my time talent is too weak? He couldn't help but speculate in his mind. Obtaining the time talent was exceedingly rare. Currently, his attribute points were just over 1,000, and reaching the perfected state of the time attribute required 10,000 points. Moreover, if it followed the developmental pattern of his space talent, even reaching the perfected state would only transform the time talent into a first-rank time physique. Therefore, his time talent was still too weak. This could be one reason. Or is it because the distance is too far? Wang Ting rubbed his chin, pondered for a moment, then charged deeper into the starry expanse. Regardless, he had to search and explore. Giving up without trying was something he couldn't accept. Wang Ting was fervently eager for a legacy related to the time talent. To save time, he simultaneously activated his space physique. Waves of spatial fluctuations emanated from him, spreading into the surroundings. Both talents were active, sensing simultaneously. He refrained from activating other talents, not because he didn't want to but because he couldn't. Activating too many talents at once would undoubtedly hinder his judgment. Since Wang Ting had decided to seek legacies related to time and space, he couldn't afford to expend too much energy on other talents. It was easy to lose focus. In Wang Teng's quest, time slowly passed once again, and a day elapsed. During this time, he encountered several eternal stage legacy stars, one related to the earth element, another to the wood element, and the third to the metal element. In terms of value, they might not surpass the wind element legacy he first encountered. In the vast expanse of the starry sky, these constellations shone like individual stars, radiating dazzling brilliance. Wang Teng, however, showed no attachment and moved past them without hesitation. Of course, since he encountered them, he couldn't resist seizing the opportunity to gain some benefits. Wang Teng received some scriptures, domains, origins, and eternal matter attribute bubbles through his probing attempts. It seems he's truly searching for a God stage legacy, the fire God stage figure remarked upon witnessing this scene. Do you think he can find it? The lightning God stage martial warrior nodded and smiled. It's hard to say. It depends on his talents and luck. God stage legacies are situated in the deepest regions, and they have no fixed locations. It's challenging to locate them, the fire God stage martial warrior explained. Even if he finds one, it doesn't guarantee he can subdue it. God stage legacies are extremely difficult to conquer. The lightning God stage martial warrior glanced at the president and continued, regardless of how you look at it, Wang Ting's chances of obtaining a God stage legacy are quite slim. It's all right. If I lose, I'll give you the 2 blood dragon wood, the president smiled and replied. The 2 God stage powerhouses revealed a hint of satisfaction. The blood dragon wood was theirs. However, they were unaware of what kind of heritage Wang Ting was truly seeking. If it were an ordinary God stage legacy, with Wang Ting's talent, he could find it with a bit of time. 3 hours passed. Wang Ting abruptly halted his movement, his gaze fixated on a specific spot, a faint hint of excitement glimmering in his eyes. He sensed it. After searching for so long, he finally felt the presence of a time element legacy. The Grand Universe Hall truly did not disappoint. It even housed a epoch legacy. How remarkable! Without hesitation, Wang Ting rushed toward the designated location. Although he sensed the existence of the time legacy, the distance should not be close. It was merely a faint feeling. After about 1 or 2 minutes, a peculiar heritage celestial appeared in Wang Teng's eyes, silently floating in the deep void, devoid of any extraneous stars in its vicinity. This star, Wang Teng frowned. It was too small. The radiance was also immensely feeble. A stellar inheritance of this size could never be a deity-level legacy. At most, it might be a heaven stage legacy. Wang Ting felt a twinge of regret, mixed with a detect of resignation. At the same time, a hint of apprehension accompanied him as he approached the diminutive heritage star. Chapter 2188, Chronicles of Time. 3. Activating the real eye, Wang Teng examined the legacy star. It displayed a nearly transparent quality, devoid of any distinct color. However, faint streams of luminescence shimmered within, and intricate and enigmatic runes entwined its surface, emanating exceptionally peculiar vibrations. These runes, even to Wang Teng, a rune grandmaster with an extensive knowledge of ancient symbols, appeared unprecedented. Could this be the legendary time runes? Wang Teng murmured to himself. Taking a deep breath, he refrained from dwelling on the thought. Pondering now served little purpose. These runes were the materialization of enlightenment. Even if he tried to exploit the situation, he couldn't obtain time runes. Thinking about it was futile. It should be a heaven stage time legacy. After scrutinizing the legacy star for a while, Wang Teng made his judgment. Heaven stage time legacy. In terms of level, it was a bit low, but being a time legacy made it incredibly rare and precious. If it were any other warrior with time talents, they might choose to directly accept the inheritance. However, Wang Ting had another option. Get some attribute bubbles. In doing so, he might not be able to acquire the complete legacy, but at least he could obtain a portion of it, which was better than nothing. The legacy star, in another spatial domain, the president and the two Godstage beings experienced a slight tremor in their hearts. Their expressions showed a subtle change. Naturally, they recognized the legacy star as a time-related one. Such inheritances were exceedingly rare throughout the entire Grand Universe Hall. But, the question was, why was Wang Ting there? Was this a coincidence? Or did he look for it himself? If Wang Ting had sought it out himself, it would be intriguing. Could it be that Wang Ting possesses the time talent? The Fire Godstage martial warrior fell into silence for a moment before uttering the words time talent. As if those two words carried an unimaginable weight. After speaking, he couldn't help but chuckle, but the amusement seemed tinged with a hint of awkwardness. What if Wang Ting truly had the time talent? There is no relevant information in this regard. The president stared at Wang Ting in that spatial domain, shaking his head after a moment. It's unlikely. Time talents appear once in several epochs, the Lightning Godstage martial warrior remarked. Even though they were reluctant to believe it, at this moment, they all focused their gazes on Wang Ting, waiting to see what choice he would make. If he chose this legacy star, it would be 100% confirmation that Wang Ting possessed a time talent. If he didn't choose it, further investigation would be needed. In the next moment, a gleam flashed in Wang Ting's eyes. His spiritual power condensed into a staff, stabbing out fiercely. Bang! Unlike before, a profoundly dull sound emanated from the time legacy star. He felt as if his spiritual power had plunged into a quagmire, difficult to extricate himself from. An invisible fluctuation spread slowly. While lacking the terrifying impact from before, Wang Teng's expression changed drastically. His pupils vibrated intensely. Without hesitation, he directly employed the space flash, disappearing from his original position and reappearing several kilometers away. The space around the time legacy star suddenly distorted, and time became chaotic. Wang Teng, still with lingering fear, gazed at that area. If he hadn't sensed the terrifying fluctuation in advance due to his time talent, he would probably have been deeply ensnared in the chaotic time zone by now. Time, at any moment and under any circumstances, was an extremely formidable and mysterious domain that must never be underestimated. Even Godstage beings would find themselves in a difficult situation when trapped in such a chaotic time zone. This kid is playing with fire. The Fire Godstage martial warrior frowned. He seems to have avoided it in advance. The Lightning Godstage martial warrior stared at Wang Ting with piercing eyes. The Fire Godstage martial warrior and the president noticed this too. There was a sharp glint in their eyes. Could it be that he truly possesses the time talent? This thought simultaneously crossed the minds of the three uncontrollably. Several attribute bubbles appeared around the time legacy star. Wang Ting felt excited but refrained from hastily collecting the bubbles. The time fluctuation in that area had not completely dissipated, and his spiritual power would be greatly affected upon entering. After 10 minutes, the time fluctuation in that area finally completely dissipated. Wang Ting carefully sensed it and then confidently extended his spiritual power to collect the attribute bubbles. Chronicles of Time *IOO Chronicles of Time *I200 reverse / 500 time domain * 800 time domain *60. Chapter 2189. Using such a method is truly despicable. 1. The attribute bubbles from the time element legacy star entered Wang Teng's body. His eyes lit up. Good stuff. This time, he hit the jackpot. Although it was only a heaven stage legacy, the attribute bubbles dropped from it seemed to Wang Ting to far surpass the eternal stage legacies he encountered before. He even felt that the eternal stage wind element legacy star was not as valuable as this time legacy star. Of course, it was a matter of personal preference. It didn't mean that the value of the wind element legacy was lower. If it was a wind element martial warrior, the eternal stage wind element legacy would naturally be more valuable to them, and the time legacy would be useless. Wang Ting took a deep breath, calming his emotions a bit, and then looked at the attributes board. First was the Chronicles of Time. After this attribute bubble merged into Wang Ting's mind, profound insights emerged, like condensed mysterious runes, imprinted in his memory. Wang Ting instantly gained enlightenment. The Chronicles of Time wasn't a scripture or battle skill. Instead, it was the insights into time left behind by the person who created this legacy. It summarized the thoughts and ideas from the person's cultivation process. With the insights from the Chronicles of Time, Wang Teng could avoid many detours in his cultivation. Simultaneously, his mastery of the power of time would become more adept, not as rudimentary as before. The same technique, when executed before and after obtaining the Chronicles of Time, would undoubtedly be different. Now, with the insights from the Chronicles of Time, if Wang Ting used the power of time, he could not only save time but also accelerate the speed of his execution. No matter how you looked at it, it was a good thing. Chronicles of Time, 2205,000, Foundation. Unfortunately, there were only 2,200 points of attributes, so Wang Teng could only reach the foundation stage. Next was a battle technique. As the attribute bubble merged into Wang Teng's mind, a humanoid figure appeared. This figure was extraordinary, standing in the void, emanating an indescribable aura. Although he stood there, it seemed like he wasn't there at all. There was a kind of illusion, an unreal feeling, as if there was a discontinuity between the previous second and the next. Suddenly, the figure made a move. He had no weapon in his hand, just using his palm as a blade, lightly slashing towards the empty space in front. It was an unremarkable palm, even a bit ethereal, without any apparent force. However, as this palm was executed, ripples appeared in the space in front, and an invisible blade swept through. Suddenly, a planet in front disintegrated. The disintegration wasn't due to a massive impact causing an explosion. Instead, it was a material breakdown, as if the time on that planet was reverse. Yes, reversed. All the substances on that planet returned to an extremely primitive state, leading to its ultimate collapse. The scene ended, and the humanoid figure disappeared. Wang Teng remained stunned in place, unable to recover for a long time. The image of the planet disintegrating lingered in his mind. Gasp! After a moment, he finally came to his senses. He couldn't help but inhale a cold breath, and his eyes were filled with shock. Reverse the flow of time, causing the target to disintegrate. Can such an attack be blocked? Wang Teng murmured to himself, finding it hard to imagine that such an attack truly existed. He had once experimented with reversing time to heal wounds, but it came at the cost of some damage to the essence of life and soul. According to his previous experiments, if he wanted to unleash the terrifying power seen in the recent scene, his essence of life and soul probably wouldn't be sufficient. He would collapse before even executing the strike. However, after obtaining this battle technique named reverse slash, Wang Teng discovered that he had seemingly been using the wrong approach all along. While utilizing the power of time would indeed subject his body to erosion by time, there was a way to avoid it and prevent the erosion from being too severe. Both the Chronicles of Time and this reverse slash contained detailed records of this knowledge. Clearly, this was the most valuable experience. This is fantastic. Joy lit up Wang Teng's eyes, and he murmured to himself, with the Chronicles of Time and this time element battle technique, I can at least use the power of time to launch attacks without worrying about consuming too much essence of life and soul. His origin of life and origin of soul were already much stronger than ordinary Cosmos stage martial warriors, reaching the limit of the Cosmos stage. Moreover, he could replenish them by picking up attributes, making the consequences much smaller than those of other time element martial warriors in the past. Reverse slash, Heaven Stage 505,000, Foundation. Unfortunately, Wang Teng only received 500 points. It was too little. This battle technique, reverse slash, requires a whopping 5,000 attribute points just to reach the foundation level, indicating that it was not that easy to master. Furthermore, this battle technique was categorized as Heaven Stage, and its rank was not considered high. Perhaps it was because of this that the legacy before him was designated as a Heaven Stage legacy. Such a level implies one thing. While the martial technique was undoubtedly powerful, it might not cause significant harm to those much stronger than oneself. If an eternal stage martial warrior acted, he might be able to resist the power of time of this battle technique. Wang Ting shook his head, no longer dwelling on such thoughts. What he had now was already sufficient. Given his current strength, thinking about eternal stage abilities was too far-fetched. As long as he remained prudent, it was unlikely that eternal stage martial warriors would attack him. Chapter 2190. Using such a method is truly despicable. 2. Such beings have their dignity and wouldn't aimlessly target a cosmos stage martial warrior. Even if they belonged to hostile factions, it wouldn't be practical for an eternal stage figure to directly confront a cosmos stage martial warrior. But the name of this martial technique seems a bit hasty, Wang Teng remarked, glancing at the attributes board. Reverse / It was appropriate, but the style was lacking. It appeared that the predecessor, much like himself, was not particularly skilled in naming things. The last two attribute bubbles were the time domain. This was an extremely rare attribute bubble. Among the domains Wang Ting currently possessed, there was no domain related to time. Obtaining the power of such a domain was truly a pleasant surprise. Immediately, the relevant insights fused into his mind, rapidly enhancing his mastery of the time domain. Time domain, 402,000, second rank. Wang Teng was surprised. He hadn't expected that his insights into the time domain would surpass the first rank, reaching the second rank. Considering that his space domain was currently at the first rank, his time domain actually caught up. Although time and space were considered the two most powerful laws in the universe, mastering time proved to be more challenging than space to some extent. Otherwise, why would there be relatively more powerhouses who mastered space than time? After his time domain reached the second rank, Wang Teng's understanding of time improved significantly. However, he discovered that using the time domain consumed more terrifying amounts of power of time and caused even more severe erosion to his origin of soul and origin of life. Only by increasing the rank could he potentially reduce some of the backlash. Of course, this meant that when using the same methods, the higher the mastery of the domain, the lower the backlash. However, generally speaking, as the mastery of the domain increased, the techniques employed would also become more powerful, leading to a more formidable backlash. It was all relative. In essence, everything depended on the individual's ability to withstand the level of backlash. Despite the lengthy explanation, it only took a short moment. After collecting the attribute bubbles, Wang Teng turned his gaze back to the time element legacy star, contemplating for a few moments. With such a good opportunity, why not pick a few more bubbles? Just a few more, it wouldn't waste too much time. At this moment, it seemed as if a voice was constantly repeating in Wang Ting's mind, urging him to stay and continue collecting the attributes. So, Wang Ting decided to stay. Bang! Since he decided to stay, Wang Ting wasted no time. He condensed his spiritual power into a stick and fiercely stabbed at the time element legacy star. The power of time spread from the star, permeating the surroundings. Attribute bubbles emerged one after another. Wang Ting directly picked them up without examining them closely. He continued stabbing. Thud, thud, thud. Continuous sounds echoed. The time element legacy star got harassed by Wang Teng continuously. 040, what is this guy doing? The lightning god stage martial warrior exclaimed. He didn't accept the legacy but keeps stabbing it like that. Is he playing? The fire god stage marital warrior said with bewilderment. Even the president had a stream of black lines on his head, unable to comprehend Wang Teng's unusual operation. At their level, not understanding the actions of a cosmos stage martial warrior was truly embarrassing. The three god stage presences dared not disclose what was happening here. Wang Teng stabbed for about a dozen times. The attribute bubbles dropping from the time element legacy star became fewer, but he continued his persistent stabbing. He was a professional at farming attribute bubbles. However, the time element legacy star no longer gave him the opportunity. The surrounding space suddenly fluctuated, and the star directly escaped. Wang Ting. Time element legacy star, I can run away. You deserve it. The lightning god stage martial warrior spat out the words uncontrollably when he saw this scene. Even he thought Wang Ting went overboard, allowing a rare and precious time element legacy star to escape. Was this something a person would do? In that case, We can't tell if he has the time talent or not. The fire god stage marital warrior frowned. Let it be, there's no need to insist. If he truly possesses a talent for time, he will expose it sooner or later. What we need to do is keep an eye on him, ensuring he doesn't fall prematurely. Such a genius belongs to our 7th Stellar Academy. It's truly fortunate, ha ha ha, the president said, laughing heartily and appearing quite pleased. That's true. Regardless, he is a member of our 7th Stellar Academy, the two God Stage entities agreed. With this young man, when the time comes for the 7 Stellar Academies to compete, our 7th Stellar Academy will surely rise. It seems like there's something to look forward to in this generation. The Lightning God Stage martial warrior chuckled. In the past competitions, our 7th Stellar Academy has always been at the bottom. How unfortunate, the Fire God Stage marital warrior remarked. Having only him is not enough. The president shook his head. I hope he becomes the disruptor in our 7th Stellar Academy, stirring up the other students. Oh! The two God Stage entities expressed surprise, then nodded in admiration. President, you're thinking ahead. Wang Teng looked at the empty void before him. The time element legacy star had long vanished without a trace, leaving him somewhat speechless. Did it have to run away like that? It made him look like some unforgivable villain. All he did was stab it a few times. Full of grievances, Wang Teng shook his head regretfully and glanced at the attributes board. Chronicles of Time, 3000 10,000, well-versed, reverse / Heaven Stage 4100 10,000, well-versed, Time Domain, 503,000, 3rd rank. Fortunately, the harvest was good. Because he stabbed it a few more times, all 3 types of attribute values increased by 1 level. Without dwelling on it further, Wang Teng, after choosing a direction, swiftly dashed towards a distant location. Earlier, when he sensed the Time Element Legacy Star, he also sensed the presence of Space Legacy Stars somewhere in the distance. There were 2 of them. He sensed 2 Space Element Legacy Stars just now. These 2 stars were in different directions, but generally speaking, both were on the route Wang Teng was currently taking, one on the left and one on the right. He decided to head towards the right Space Element Legacy Star first. The one he sensed on the other side seemed to be more intense, and the better things should be saved for later. Soon, Wang Teng arrived at his destination. A peculiar legacy star appeared before his eyes. This star was entirely silver-white, and judging by its size, it should belong to the Cosmos Stage. Cosmos Stage. Wang Teng rubbed his chin, preparing to give it a poke first. He congregated his spiritual power and stabbed it out. With a loud bang, a powerful space fluctuation swept out. Wang Teng was much calmer than when he encountered the Time Element Legacy Star. With a flicker, he disappeared from his original position. He had no problem resisting Cosmos Stage space fluctuations. But there was no need for him to forcefully endure it. As the attribute bubbles fell, Wang Teng's spiritual power rushed into the still lingering spatial fluctuation, retrieving the attribute bubbles. Chronicles of Space *I30 Chronicles of Space *I60 Space Domain *I00 Space Domain *80. Several attribute bubbles merged into Wang Teng's body, transforming into insights that he absorbed. Chronicles of Space. Wang Teng's expression turned strange. Chronicles of Time, Chronicles of Space. How many chronicles are there? These are high-level insights. Can you be a little more serious? Chronicles of Space, 2900 3000, Foundation. There were 2,900 points of attributes in total. It was only enough for Wang Teng to reach the Foundation stage. The problem was that the Foundation stage required 3,000 attribute points, just 100 points short. Wasn't this tempting him to continue poking the star? Damn it. Using such a method is truly despicable. Wang Teng looked at the other attribute bubbles. He received 180 points of space domain. It wasn't a lot. But, considering that this was only a Cosmos Stage legacy star, it was already impressive that the other party could grasp the domain. Space domain, 981,000, 1st rank, Wang Teng. Are you kidding me? System, you must be kidding, right? He felt utterly powerless to complain. The space domain just reached the critical point, lacking only 20 attribute points to break through to the second rank. Was it really a coincidence? He couldn't believe that there was no foul play involved. Chapter 2191. We underestimated this little guy's decisiveness. 1. In such a case, I'll go along with your wishes. With a fierce and determined glare, Wang Ting directed his spiritual power toward the space element legacy star before him, forcefully thrusting it out. If he was going to reap, he might as well do it thoroughly. Boom. 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 A series of explosions echoed as Wang Ting's spiritual power jabbed at the star and attribute bubbles kept dropping. In no time, Wang Ting found himself stunned in place. The space element legacy star was gone. It ran away. It ran away again. Without a word, with a flicker of spatial fluctuations, it vanished without a trace. Wang Ting didn't know what to say anymore. He cursed under his breath and glanced at the attributes board. Chronicles of Space, 3305,000, well-versed, Space Domain, 1302,000, second rank. Both attributes had ascended by a level, and Wang Ting felt reasonably satisfied. At least his efforts were not in vain. Without further hesitation, he swiftly dashed toward the location of another space element legacy star. He found a space element legacy star. The two God-stage martial warriors were taken aback to see Wang Ting actually locating a space element legacy star. Just moments after finding the time element legacy star, he found a space element one. What kind of talent did this little guy possess? Or did he truly possess some special means to locate the corresponding legacy stars? The two formidable figures from the Stellar Academy were now genuinely puzzled. Mainly because Wang Ting didn't go to accept the legacy but kept poking legacy stars, leaving them utterly baffled. After some time, Wang Ting found another constellation space element legacy star. This left the two God-stage martial warriors exchanging glances, even more convinced that Wang Ting must have some special means to locate these legacy stars. Mind you, whether it was the Time Constellation Legacy Star or the Space Element Legacy Star, they were all extremely rare. Other martial warriors might come across one, and that would be considered very fortunate. However, Wang Ting had found so many, leaving people with plenty to ponder. A universe stage space element legacy star. Wang Ting's eyes slightly lit up. He was genuinely surprised. Without hesitation, he began to poke it. Boom. An extremely terrifying spatial fluctuation instantly rippled out, prompting Wang Ting to swiftly dodge and reappear in the distance. Several attribute bubbles emerged from within the legacy star, hovering in the surroundings. Get them! Wang Ting silently exclaimed in his mind as his spiritual power reached out, picking them up one by one. Chronicles of Space *4500 Chronicles of Space *380 Space Domain *2000 Space Domain *220 Origin of Space *Yo Origin of Space *60 I can't believe it. What a huge harvest. Wang Ting's eyes widened slightly, utterly surprised by the abundance of gains this time. The universe stage legacy star was terrifying. Wang Ting couldn't help but sigh at the unexpected windfall. Then, he turned his attention to the changes in the attributes board. However, when he saw the first attribute value, he couldn't help but feel a bit speechless. It was the Chronicles of Space again. Why couldn't he get a specific scripture or battle technique? Wang Ting felt a bit helpless, but before he could ponder more, relevant insights immediately emerged in his mind. Astonishingly, these were insights from within the Chronicles of Space. He suddenly realized that the insights gained from this Chronicles of Space were much more profound than before. Despite both being Chronicles of Space, the insights were different. In an instant, Wang Ting gained some enlightenment. The Chronicles of Space was probably the insights of a space element martial warrior, just presented in this particular form. Chronicles of Space, Universe Stage 6610,000, Specialized. Wang Ting glanced at the attributes board, somewhat surprised. This time, the Chronicles of Space had the words Universe Stage added to it, indicating a clear connection between the two. Now, this Universe Stage Chronicles of Space seemed to replace the previous Chronicles of Space obtained from the Cosmos Stage Legacy. Furthermore, Wang Ting's mastery of the chronicles of space had progressed from well-versed to specialized, instantly advancing to a higher level. His proficiency in controlling spatial energy became extremely adept, making future applications of spatial power more fluid. Next was the space domain attribute, and this time, he unexpectedly gained a substantial 4,200 points. Space domain, 504,000, 4th rank. As a result, Wang Ting's space domain jumped from the 2nd rank to the 4th rank. It rose 2 levels. Wang Ting was overjoyed. This time, he truly struck gold. Even the space domain had advanced so much. Finally, there was the origin of space attribute, totaling 1,300 points, a considerable amount. This was the power of laws of origin, one of the most challenging to comprehend among various origin laws. Although Wang Ting had already grasped the origin of space, it wasn't much, only 630 points of attribute value. This time, he gained more than he did in the previous encounter in the chaotic Uncharted, a whopping 1,300 points of attribute value. Origin of space, 1930, 10,000, 1st rank. Unfortunately, he didn't acquire any space scriptures or battle techniques, leaving Wang Ting somewhat disappointed. Wang Ting looked at the universe stage legacy star in front of him, hesitating. Should he accept this legacy? Time was running out. The delay earlier had left him with less than a day. If he couldn't find a higher-level space element legacy star, he would be at a significant loss. He couldn't afford to act recklessly now. If he probed carelessly again and the current space element legacy star disappeared, he might not be able to retrieve it. Feeling a bit helpless, Wang Ting ultimately decided to search once more. He was unwilling to settle for a universe stage legacy star, even if it was a space one. Chapter 2192. We underestimated this little guy's decisiveness. 2. Then he left directly to search for other legacy stars. He doesn't even want the universe stage space element legacy star? Does he really possess space talent? The Fire God Stage martial warrior asked. He has space talent, the president unexpectedly revealed, smiling. But his decisive abandonment of this universe stage legacy still surprises me. It seems, as I suspected, he is aiming for a God Stage legacy. President, you knew about it already? The Lightning God Stage martial warrior asked in surprise. Yes, he once used his space talent. It's not much of a secret. The president nodded. The 2 God Stage martial warriors were speechless. The president had known all along, yet he watched them speculate, seemingly for his own amusement. He truly is a space talent. This young man's talent is exceptional, the Lightning God Stage martial warrior remarked, his gaze flashing. The Fire God Stage martial warrior nodded in agreement. A martial warrior with a powerful physical body and the bonus of space talent was already extraordinary, a rarity in the world. Even so, I still don't believe he can obtain a God Stage legacy. The Fire God Stage martial warrior shook his head. The president was now somewhat uncertain. It seemed that if Wang Ting was indeed seeking a God Stage legacy related to space, the difficulty would undoubtedly increase. 4 ordinary God Stage legacies related to the 5 elemental forces, the president believed Wang Ting might have a chance. However, a God Stage legacy focused on space was exceptionally rare, and finding it was far from guaranteed. I recall there aren't many space legacies in the Grand Universe Hall, right? The Lightning God Stage martial warrior asked. Yes. The president nodded. There's only one God Stage space legacy. The Lightning God Stage martial warrior and the Fire God Stage martial warrior fell into silence, their gazes converging on Wang Ting. Only one. Could he find it? Wang Ting raced through the void, almost reaching his maximum speed as he dashed toward the depths of this spatial expanse. He believed that if there were God Stage legacies, they must be located in the deepest part of the Grand Universe Hall. The surrounding starry sky gradually became more profound, turning pitch black, devoid of any stars, and completely void of light. In such an environment, even perception seemed incredibly difficult. Frowning, Wang Ting activated the 4th rank space physique to its utmost. Waves of spatial energy emanated from him, forming a vast net that extended in all directions. As time passed, the remaining time grew shorter, leaving only half a day. Could it be that there is no God-stage space element legacy? Wang Ting's brows furrowed deeper and deeper. During his ascent of the staircase in the Godslayer Sword Scripture, he had gained the Godslayer Sword Scripture. This was a divine-level space element battle technique. In terms of heritage, the Great Qian Academy was undoubtedly inferior to the Stellar Academies. In theory, the Stellar Academies should not lack Godstage legacies. Unfortunately, the facts were apparent. Wang Ting couldn't help but sigh. If things didn't work out, he might have to give up. He didn't have time to waste anymore. Perhaps it was his fate to seek Godstage legacies related to other forces instead. He activated various elemental talents and swiftly headed in a direction. An hour later, he suddenly came to a halt. He felt it. It seemed to be a lightning element legacy star. In his perception, there appeared to be a massive star in the void ahead, radiating a dazzling light. This radiance was even more intense than the Eternal Stage legacy stars he had encountered earlier. This must be a God-stage legacy. The lightning element God-stage legacy was an excellent choice too. Without hesitation, Wang Ting rushed towards it. However, after flying thousands of meters, he suddenly stopped. A subtle movement in his heart made him gaze skeptically at another section of the void. It was as if something there was calling out to him. Wang Ting's space physique remained active. He felt a restless sensation in his body as if it wanted to rush in that direction. But this was just an impulse. He didn't sense the presence of any legacy there, and it seemed quite distant. It wasn't like the lightning element God-stage legacy. Wang Ting could already feel the scorching heat before he got close to it. This feeling was undeniable. The lightning element God-stage legacy was right in front of him. On the contrary, the impulse from the other side was filled with uncertainty. Wang Ting suddenly found himself in a dilemma. Didn't he discover the lightning element God-stage legacy? Why did he stop? The fire God-stage martial warrior was surprised. This kid is quite lucky. The president's expression was peculiar. President, did you see something? The lightning God-stage martial warrior asked curiously. Within the Grand Universe Hall, the president's authority surpassed theirs. What they couldn't see, the president might still be able to. Hence the question. You'll see. The president shook his head. His gaze had never left Wang Ting, and he was curious about which choice Wang Ting would ultimately make. In the void, Wang Ting hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and rushed towards the unknown. He raced madly through the void, covering quite a distance. Now, he could only follow his instincts. Otherwise, he couldn't perceive anything at all. Time passed bit by bit, 1 hour, 2 hours. The sensation became increasingly intense, but time continued to dwindle. Why haven't one arrived yet? Wang Ting felt a bit frantic. The distance was beyond his expectations. He had been flying for so long and still had yet to reach. Could it be that his intuition was wrong? But now that he had come this far, going back to find the God-stage lightning element legacy star was no longer an option. He could only grit his teeth and continue flying forward. Boom! Wang Ting immediately activated his space flash and light bolt skills. His body turned into a streak of light, flickering in the void, sometimes disappearing, sometimes reappearing, swiftly traversing through space. The time is running out. This kid is getting anxious. The fire God-stage martial warrior shook his head. If the time runs out, and he still hasn't found the corresponding legacy, will you really let him leave? The lightning God-stage martial warrior asked. This was an extremely rare opportunity. If he missed it like this, it would be a pity. Wang Ting was a talent they had high hopes for. If he failed to obtain a legacy in the Grand Universe Hall, it would be a significant loss of opportunity. The president set the time limit, and if it needed changing, it could be changed. It all depended on the president. It's his own choice. No one can be blamed, the president said casually. The growth of a genius is more challenging, with many more trials than an ordinary warrior. If he can't overcome such trials, it only means his temperament is not enough. There are gains and losses. If he wants a better legacy, he must be prepared to get nothing, the fire godstage martial warrior added. All right, you two seem to be taking it lightly. The lightning godstage martial warrior shook his head. He was an impulsive person while the president and the fire godstage martial warrior were more rational. Unaware of the exchange between the president and the two godstage martial warriors, Wang Ting only had one thought at this moment: find that legacy, or he wouldn't be content. There was only 1 hour left. Wang Ting's speed had reached its maximum, and in the void, only the lingering afterimage of a streak of light could be seen. He had become the sole light in this pitch-black void. Until a faint starlight appeared in front. In this dim void, that speck of starlight was extremely eye-catching. Wang Ting shuddered, an uncontrollable joy surging from the depths of his heart, almost spreading through his entire consciousness. He saw it. He finally saw it. It was indeed a godstage legacy star. As the distance shortened, the starlight in front gradually enlarged, transforming into a colossal, silver-white, radiant celestial body. All right, it's you. Wang Ting couldn't help but burst into laughter. His eyes shimmered with a brilliant light, and with almost no hesitation, his figure turned into a streak of light and plunged into that legacy star. Boom! A terrifying roar echoed, the void trembled, and the colossal celestial body suddenly erupted with endless radiance, as if it wanted to illuminate the entire void. In an instant, everything seemed to freeze. Invisible spatial fluctuations swept through, and the massive silver-white celestial body vibrated continuously as if welcoming Wang Ting's arrival. The president and the two godstage martial warriors widened their eyes slightly, completely unprepared for the fact that Wang Ting would rush into the legacy star without a moment's hesitation. This is too impulsive. The fire godstage martial warrior sighed. Is he not afraid of being rebounded and killed by this legacy star? The legacy stars asked. Phew. The president let out a sigh, smiling bitterly. We underestimated this young man's decisiveness. Chapter 2193. Wang Ting didn't find a master. The gathering of the judges. 1. 10 days flew by in the blink of an eye. The 7th Stellar Academy's Grand Disciple Acceptance Ceremony had come to a close. Many talented students were accepted as disciples by the Academy's formidable figures, embarking on the challenging path of cultivation. Don't think that becoming a disciple guarantees an easy life. On the contrary, even harsher trials await them. The methods of these Academy powerhouses were no joking matter. Strict masters create outstanding disciples. To uphold their prestige, the Academy instructors could be exceedingly strict with their teachings. Of course, those students without masters had it even tougher. They could only rely on themselves and risk their lives to gain experience. Half a year ago, almost all students were practicing within the Academy. Now, they must venture outside, undertake various missions, experience life and death situations. This was the best and fastest way for them to improve. Warriors need to undergo challenges. Staying in the Stellar Academy for practice would only make them weak. Whether it was a student who had a master or a student who didn't, there would always be one person's whereabouts that caught their attention. His significance was vastly different. He single-handedly suppressed all the geniuses of the 7th Stellar Academy, rightfully earning the title of the strongest freshman. Unconsciously, many people regarded him as the leader of the new generation, even a spiritual guide. This was something he had earned. Few dared to challenge him, and most could only admire him. Even those who didn't want to admit it had to acknowledge his achievements. They could only plan in secret, as he was currently in the spotlight. Many people treated it as their target. Others considered him the leader of the new generation, an inspiration, and perhaps even a legend in the making. With a target, they could go further. At the same time, a piece of news spread from within the Academy. Wang Ting doesn't have a master. This piece of news shocked many, leaving them surprised and puzzled. With Wang Ting's talent, how could he possibly not have a master? This doesn't make sense. Moreover, wasn't he taken away by the president in the end? Why wouldn't he have a master? It must be fake. Many questioned the authenticity of this news, thinking that someone was trying to smear Wang Ting and undermine his reputation. Who is spreading rumors? How can the president not have a master? Yeah, our president's talent far surpasses everyone. It's impossible for him not to have a master. Our academy's president took him away. He might become the president's disciple. Stop being bitter, shut your stinking mouths. The members of the Constellation Society were infuriated. They wished they could find the person who spread the rumor and let everyone know his evil intention. He hasn't found a master. The president didn't take in a disciple either. But, at this moment, even Yuan Mu stood up and spoke up. Many were astonished, finding it hard to believe that Wang Teng did not find a master. Is that true? No way. The members of the Constellation Society didn't believe him. With their leader's talent, even if he couldn't become the disciple of a God-stage martial warrior, he could become an eternal stage ruler's disciple. Why didn't anyone accept him as their disciple? At the same time, Yu Qiqiao, Wu Yang, Yu Yunxian, and the others came back with news that Wang Teng didn't have a master. They brought back confirmation that Wang Teng indeed had not taken a master. This information came directly from their instructors. The members of the Constellation Society were dead silent. Their president didn't acknowledge anyone as his master. If it were just hearsay from outsiders, they might not have believed it, but coming from individuals like Yu Qiqiao, Wu Yang, Yu Yunxian, and others, they had no choice but to accept it. How did this happen? Why didn't the president take him in? Someone asked. But the answer they received from Yu Qiqiao, Yu Yunxian, and the others was two words: don't know. The members of the Constellation Society were disappointed. Wang Teng, who was ranked first on the freshman leaderboard and had conquered the spiritual Hollow Mountain, had inexplicably chosen not to have a master. It was a reality they found hard to accept. Ha ha ha! Upon hearing this news, the members of the Qingyang Society erupted into joyous laughter, reveling in their malicious delight. The relationship between the Qingyang Society and Wang Ting had always been tense. Despite Wang Ting's outstanding performance on the spiritual Hollow Mountain, the fact that he did not have a master now significantly reduced the perceived threat. This was precisely what the members of the spiritual Hollow Mountain wanted to see. A talented individual who doesn't have a master. Let's see how long your arrogance lasts. Ruan Banlian sneered with a hint of resentment in her eyes. Now that he doesn't have a master, I do not need to be cautious. It's time to employ those methods, Feng Qingyang said indifferently. Make it quick. I can't wait to see him fall from grace, Ruan Banlian added with a cold tone. That fellow doesn't have a master. Shi Tianyun and Shen Yangfeng were elated. During their ascent of the spiritual Hollow Mountain, their performance in the final moments left much to be desired, and many eternal stage martial warriors did not take them as disciples. However, their talents were commendable, and eventually, they found two eternal stage marquises. If Wang Ting had a master, their current situation wouldn't have mattered much. However, with Wang Ting not having a master, their advantages became more apparent. Perhaps they could now resolve the issue of that contract. Wang Teng didn't acknowledge anyone as his master. Wn Dong and the others blinked. They were still under the influence of the poison, and if Wang Ting had a God-stage martial warrior as his master, they wouldn't dare use other means. However, with Wang Ting not having one, everything changed. Chapter 2194 Wang Teng didn't find a master. The Gathering of the Judges. 2. I will ask for help from a friend who ranks among the top 100 Heaven Stage martial warrior ranking. I don't want to be controlled by poison forever, Cobb declared. Gikdor, Wu Cheng, Dong Lei, and the others kept quiet. Their expressions kept changing. Do you still expect him to show mercy? Cobb sneered as he observed their reactions. Cobb, even if he doesn't have a master, our lives are still in his hands. Are you sure it won't be a problem? Wu Cheng asked. If he wants to continue staying in the stellar academies, he needs to learn how to compromise. I don't believe that he can do anything to me in the stellar academies, Cobb said firmly. That's not necessarily true. Considering his personality, do you think he would be afraid? Dong Lei suddenly spoke up. Even if he's not afraid, what does it matter? Although has a monstrous talent, can he compare to the geniuses on the top 100 list? Cobb huffed disdainfully, then turned and walked away. His voice echoed from a distance, "If you want to be his dogs, I won't stop you, but I will never submit." Ridiculous. Wu Cheng and the others' expressions turned sour. Cobb's words were harsh, hitting them directly in their emotional wounds. Wan Dong turned and left silently. "I still think we shouldn't act recklessly," Gikdor spoke after a moment of silence. "I agree." Dong Lei hesitated for a moment and nodded, "and I feel there's something suspicious about Wang Ting not having a master." "Oh." Gikdor and Cobb looked at her in surprise. "A woman's sixth sense," Dong Lei said. Gikdor. Wu Cheng. The news that Wang Ting didn't have a master spread far and wide, stirring various reactions among the people. Given Wang Teng's immense reputation as the strongest freshman, many eyes were on him. The fact that he didn't have a master was a significant piece of news with far-reaching implications. At the same time, there was another question that intrigued many. Where did Wang Teng go? Since the day he was taken away by the dean on the summit of the spiritual Hollow Mountain, Wang Teng had not reappeared. Since he didn't acknowledge the president as his master, where did he go? This question remained unknown to everyone except the president and the two Godstage martial warriors. The Academy Arbitration Association. 7 figures appeared at the highest level of the Arbitration Association. The 7 judges gathered again, and this time, they convened for the same person, Wang Ting. It had to be admitted that since the establishment of the Academy Arbitration Association, Wang Teng was the only new student who could mobilize them in such a way. "What brings us all together again?" The judge seated in the 3rd chair spoke. "Do you remember what happened half a year ago?" the 7th judge asked indifferently. "Half a year ago? What happened half a year ago?" the 4th judge inquired. "The freshman named Wang Ting. Initially, we offered him a position as an associate council member, but he rejected it," the 7th judge said casually. Wang Ting. The judges immediately remembered this name. He didn't accept the associate council member position? The 5th judgment smiled with interest. "He didn't report to the Academy Arbitration Association half a year ago," the 7th judge stated. "He seems to be a tough one." The 6th judge chuckled. "If he didn't accept it, then so be it. Why gather us for such matters? Can't the lower ranks handle it?" The 2nd judge said indifferently. "The issue is that he has now claimed the top spot on the freshman leaderboard and even ascended to the summit of the spiritual Hollow Mountain," the 7th judge continued. The summit of the spiritual Hollow Mountain. The rest of the judges were instantly surprised, and their gazes fell on the face of the 1st judge. Sitting in the 1st chair, the 1st judge, who had been resting with closed eyes, suddenly opened his eyes. A peculiar light flashed in his eyes as he looked at the 7th judge. His voice slowly echoed. "You say he ascended to the summit of the spiritual Hollow Mountain?" "That's right," the 7th judge calmly affirmed. "You may not be aware of this as you are not within the Academy, but this matter is widely known among the people of the 7th Stellar Academy." "Intriguing," the 1st judge murmured to himself. Never thought that after so many years, there would still be someone able to reach the summit of the 2nd judge. The 2nd judge pondered, looking at the 1st judge. "Speaking of which, when you ascended the spiritual Hollow Mountain back then, did you unravel the mysteries of the mountain?" The other judges looked over. They were curious too. "I can't say," the 1st judge said. The other judges were disappointed. After Wang Ting ascended to the summit of the spiritual Hollow Mountain, he disappeared for a very short period. The 7th judge suddenly dropped a bomb. "What?" The 1st judge was about to close his eyes, no longer interested in the matter. However, upon hearing the 7th judge's words, he widened his eyes again. "Disappeared?" The other judges were equally astonished. "Why did he disappear?" the 3rd judge asked in surprise. "I don't know." The 7th judge looked at the 1st judge as if expecting to find the answers from him. The 1st judge furrowed his brow, full of confusion, evidently not knowing the details. Back then, he had only managed to discern some clues and had not truly encountered the phenomenon. "It seems that this Wang Ting has an extraordinary fate," the 2nd judge remarked meaningfully after a brief silence. "After his return, our president and the 2 true gods took him away. No one knows where he went. Shortly afterward, news spread from the academy that no one had accepted him as a disciple, the seventh judge explained. No one accepted him as a disciple. The other judges were astounded. Considering Wang Ting's talent, it's impossible for no one to accept him as a disciple. The third judge expressed doubt. That is the most intriguing part of the story, the sixth judge added. I recall that upon reaching the summit of the spiritual hollow mountain, one could enter the Grand Universe Hall and choose a legacy, the second judge mentioned. Indeed. The first judge confirmed. He was the only one who managed to enter the Grand Universe Hall because he reached the peak of the spiritual hollow mountain. It seems that Wang Ting also entered the Grand Universe Hall, the third judge said with a touch of envy. We just don't know what kind of legacy he received. First judge, can you finally reveal what legacy you obtained back then? The second judge inquired. An eternal stage legacy. The first judge replied calmly. An eternal stage legacy. The other judges were taken aback. It appears you were already far ahead of us at that time, the second judge remarked meaningfully, looking at the first judge. What kind of legacy do you think Wang Teng will get? The fourth judge asked. At most, an eternal stage 1, the fifth judge stated. Yes, with his talent, he should be able to obtain an eternal stage legacy, the second judge nodded. So, what do you think of Wang Teng's arrangement? There was a strange look in the seventh judge's eyes as he changed the topic. Are there any other instructions from the academy's higher-ups? The second judge inquired. Not at the moment, replied the seventh judge. The current issue is how we should handle the placement of Wang Teng, the fourth judge stated. Since the academy hasn't provided specific instructions, we will stick to the original decision, the fifth judge calmly said. Being an associate council member is sufficient for a new student. That settles it. The seventh judge declared. He didn't deviate from the original decision. The gathering of the 7 judgments to discuss this matter was merely a formality according to the rules of the Academy Arbitration Association. The counselor assessment is approaching, the sixth judge suddenly remarked. With his ability, it's too early for him to participate in the counselor assessment. Let him be a council associate member first, the seventh judge said. Wang Ting doesn't accept the invitation. Forcing him into this role might lead to trouble, the third judge frowned. And many strong individuals from your 7th Stellar Academy are probably keeping an eye on him. This matter is no longer so simple, the second judge added. He's just a freshman. Even if his talent is indeed remarkable, it shouldn't lead the Academy's strong figures to intervene in our affairs at the Academy Arbitration Association. This has never happened before, the fourth judge chuckled. It's hard to say. The second judge shook his head. Since opinions are not unanimous, let's put it to a vote, the third judge proposed. All right. The judges agreed. After a round of voting, the results quickly emerged. Only the first judge opposed, surprising the other judges. The fourth and sixth judge chose to support the decision of the seventh judge, while the rest abstained. In the end, the seventh judge won with 2 votes. Then let's stick to the original decision. The seventh judge's lips curved slightly. The other judges didn't say more, their figures disappearing from their seats. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.